All right, good afternoon, everyone. I think we're going to get started. So welcome to the Government Oversight public hearing on Monday, May 5th. It's 2:08. We're going to get started. And we have a public hearing on a number of conveyances. So let me just begin by asking my good co-chair if she has any comments.
None right now. I'm looking forward to hearing from everyone. It is very busy today at the Legislative Office building, so hopefully folks were able to get in okay. And if we miss somebody when they come in, we'll get them back in the line, I think. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Dathan. And let me ask our ranking member, Representative Carney.
Sure. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just looking forward to hearing from everybody and uh, talking about some of these pieces of land that they would like conveyed. So thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
I think you may have heard some of the other meeting there. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I don't think that was coming. Okay, all right. All right, great. We're ready to get started. So we'll begin with our first speaker. We have Senator Tony Hwang. Let me put on the record. We may be from different parties. We have one important thing in common. So I'm putting it on the record. We're both Cornellians, and that is a bond that will connect us. So that matters more, right? Okay. Senator Hwang.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Gatkar Wilcox, and Chairwoman Dathan, and as well as Ranking Member Carney. And indeed, it is that kind of a step off from the standpoint of the lessons that we've learned from a stewardship and a responsibility for environmental preservation and sustainability. But I also wanted to thank the Government Oversight Committee because as a long standing member from the GAE committee, conveyance was always one where there was some frustration in regards to transparency and accountability. This forum, this type of an engagement allows an opportunity for transparency, accountability, and the public's input. So that being said, I'll get right to the point. I'm State Senator Tony Hwang, the privilege of representing the 28th Senate District, which encompasses Newtown, Bethel, Easton, and Fairfield. I'm testifying today in support of the opportunity of supporting Senate Bill 1562, an act changing the authorized use of parcel of state land previously conveyed to the town of Newtown. This legislation proposes a real meaningful change, lifting the current deed restriction, which occurred in 2004, that limits the use of a state conveyed parcel in Newtown exclusively for economic development. Instead, this bill would permit the parcel's use for open space or recreational purposes, reflecting the community's deeply held commitment to environmental sustainability, public health, and quality of life. This is not merely a technical adjustment, it is a decision that acknowledges the importance of protecting ecologically sensitive land, a land that sits atop an aquifer protection area that borders the Catherine Violet Hubbard Animal Sanctuary and lies just uphill from Deep Brook, which is a Class 1 trout stream recognized for its pristine water quality and also a feeder pond into the Putatuck River, which flows down into the Housatonic and into the Sound. But it is a delicate ecosystem. And I think removing this kind of economic development and using it for recreational and open space will empower the town to preserve this vulnerable and environmentally sensitive space. It is also opening the door for, I think, the balance between economic development and the financial interest in regards to municipalities to creating an ecotourism, educational awareness and a destination. I think that's the unique balance. I had the incredible pleasure of walking this property on Saturday. And it was just walking the streams, seeing the wildlife, and just enjoying what nature's provided and the delicate balance of what that land is all about. I think the best phrase that would offer in asking for this committee to support this conveyance is, it was a hat that was worn by an advocate. He says, once gone, lost forever. And I think that is a key theme in regards to protecting this land for open space and recreation, but balance it with the economic needs of a municipality for tax revenue and development. You can have a bit of both. And I think this conveyance and changing this land will meet both of those goals. Along with the same theme, I'd like to offer a quick testimony in support of 1564, an act amending a prior conveyance of a parcel of state land to the Catherine Violet Hubbard Foundation. This bill would propose a thoughtful and an essential amendment to the original conveyance of the state land to the Catherine Hubbard Foundation, an animal sanctuary and an environmental education center. It is an organization that was born from a terrible tragedy, which has become a living symbol of compassion, healing, and a purpose in our broader community. Senate Bill 1564 would remove the deed restriction that currently prevents the foundation from being able to build and lease a parcel of land or using it to be able to obtain a loan to be able to build an educational center, which could serve to continue the mission. And I think balanced with the conveyance of 6 Commerce Road, we would be able to create a dynamic destination which would lure and educate communities from all around the area, from Danbury to Waterbury to Bridgeport, to be able to bring diverse groups of children and adults to understand our stewardship and responsibility, as I mentioned earlier, that we've been able to garner from the beautiful Ithaca gorges and landscape that reminded us that we have an important societal responsibility to protect our environment and sustainability, particularly in this day and age of climate change, with once in a 1,000-year storm occurring every few years. The protection of our waterways, the protection of open space to be able to absorb unexpected storm challenges is an important factor in preservation. So again, 1564 would complement the conveyance change of 1562, but this was not taken lightly. This was taken with many consultations with the state's attorney's general office to ensure that the language and the intent fulfills the mission of the conveyance to provide a greater public good of this land, and it would never be used for the wrong purposes, but also allow it to be able to use some aspects of it for a loan to build the necessary educational information and gathering center, as I would describe a eco tourism and educational center. Again, I appreciate the indulgence of the committee, and I'm available for any questions, but I rise in strong support of 1562 and 1564. And before I close, I want to acknowledge the collaborative efforts of my fellow state representatives representing Newtown, Representative Belinsky and Representative Foncello, for their efforts in collaborating in support of these programs. Ultimately, it is our stewardship and responsibility to ensure this precious, precious parcel of land remains open and available to everyone in Connecticut. Thank you. Happy to take any questions, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator Huang. I had just one question. Is you said, given this as a potential ecotourism destination, that does also serve the economic development purposes, right? So it has multiple
Absolutely.
advantages.
But it is a pivot. It is a pivot from a standpoint of a shift in philosophical what economic development means. The Hubbard Sanctuary has been an incredible draw from people throughout the entire Northwest region, but also down in the municipalities and school groups that have come and feel firsthand the experience and the opportunities to be able to experience. So it is a balance with regards to economic development, which is an important factor of consideration for any municipality. But ultimately, I think it's a win-win from an opportunity for ecotourism and environmental sustainability. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Senator Huang. Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Senator. Just for clarity on 1562. So this land was conveyed in 2004 for commercial purposes. So the request here is to add recreational and open space to that. In addition to, is that was my understanding correct?
No, sir. A correction. Thank you for the question and the clarification. It is to change the conveyance from economic development to open space and recreational use, changing the focus of it to preserve it as open space land. But it is, in a way, as I said, another way of looking at economic development, but instead of density and economic development in the old ways that we thought about, this is a possible win-win to preserve a pristine piece of land. But the change in the conveyance is very specific, to change it from economic development, which in 2004, it might have been a different point of consideration, to now a open space and recreational use.
Okay. And again, it was just for clarity. I don't certainly have no problem with that. So when it was conveyed in 2004, has any development happened in that time? since
There has
then?
been, through you, there has been some proposals, and I think there was some concern in regards to density, as well as the impact it would have on the waterway and the open space. So I think we all, as representatives, heard the voice of the people in the community that saw there's a different time and a different perspective from 2004. I understood the original intent was, look, we need economic development. We need to be able to alleviate tax-based burden on our valued taxpayers, no doubt. But what we have seen in this possibility with climate change initiatives and the value and the sensitivity and the delicate balance of this land to ecosystems and waterways. In fact, the Trouts Unlimited has been an incredible educator in talking about increased density development would potentially increase river temperatures to the uptolls of multiple degrees, which would significantly hamper, if not devastate, if not kill off the trout and native species of habitat of fishes and habitats in there. So it is a much more delicate system that we know now in 2025 than in 2004.
Okay. So again, the land's already been conveyed, but this would change what the purpose would be. And how many acres is that, or square miles? Do you know?
I don't know exactly. I can provide with this committee the maps and details and exact acreage, but it is an expansive field of land, and I'll share with you. I will be glad to share with the leadership of this committee and the ranking photos and the riverways and maps of this beautiful piece of property that I had a chance to walk and really enjoy. And I think that's the essence of this kind of request for changing it to open space and preservation. I don't want to live in a world where the only experience that I get and future generations in regards to natural habitats and open spaces is in Disney World. I want it to be in a community where we can reside and coexist and balance with understanding that economic development can be part and parcel with economic awareness and education.
You mentioned in 1564, the Hubbard Sanctuary request, and is there an overlap between the two? You mentioned there was some, is this also in Newtown? And is there any overlap between the two?
Representative Vale, that's an excellent question. I think the conveyance for 1562 conveyed and addressed the properties as 6 and 8 Commerce Road. They are two distinct properties. 6 is the only one under consideration in 1562. That is a parcel of land that was deeded in 2004 for economic development. The Hubbard property on 8 Commerce, which is impacted in 64 only, was conveyed by an act of this legislature to create an animal sanctuary and an ecosystem. I think having visited many times, again, as I said, it was born out of a tragedy, but ultimately the mission that has been fulfilled and continue to be fulfilled is one of awareness and collaboration with animals and our natural habitat. It is an incredible institution where people are interacting with nature, and I would encourage all the committee members to be able to visit this beautiful setting where education, pollinators, and also an opportunity for adoption of animals has existed in many of the events that they hold. This really is an opportunity that fulfills the mission to honor an incredible young person.
And so these two properties, they're abutting?
They are abutting, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senator, good to see you.
Great to see you, sir.
Yeah, I missed the very first few minutes of your testimony, and I apologize for that. There's a lot of
Oh, you've been
lot
busy
of lot of
on a
business
very
going on
important
outside.
issue, sir.
Yes, it's crowded, and just trying to walk across the LOB is a little difficult at the moment.
It's the people's voice.
I just wanted to follow up on some of this because I'm reading the testimony and I feel like there's a little disconnect. Some of the folks who submitted opposition testimony to these two items seem like they're clamoring for open space and a halt to any kind of development. But it seems to me that's what the purpose of both of these conveyances are. In 1562, we're going to cease to do economic development and we're going to make it more of an open space property. And 1564, it's just about constructing this educational barn. Am I correct about that? Or is it, I'm just trying to find out really, Senator, whether or not the folks that submitted the opposition testimony just don't know really the extent of what's happening here, or they have some other concern, if you know. Through you.
Thank you, Senator. I think you raise a very important point that I tried to address earlier in the sense that the change in the conveyance needs to reflect some of the concerns in regards to potential loss of economic development funds and revenue to municipalities. Make no mistake about it, that is a due consideration. But I think in walking the land and understanding that there is tremendous momentum for environmental as well as land preservation and open space education and awareness opportunities. As I cited earlier, it is an opportunity for eco-education and ecotourism. These two parcels of land conjoining creates an incredible opportunity to create a natural evolving landscape that can afford children from not only Newtown, Bethel, and Easton, as well as Southbury and Woket, but also afford opportunities for cities and urban settings such as Danbury and Waterbury and Bridgeport that would never have the opportunity to expose the natural habitat and understanding and an escape on weekends from the bearing heat of concrete landscape. So again, when I say it is an opportunity for economic development, not in the sense that we talked about in past tenses, but this is an incredible opportunity to combine both parcels for the conveyance that is conveyed here, to be able to build an opportunity for it to be a center of environmental education and interactive environmental awareness. But also, I think the other part is to also recognize that we can do better in regards to renewable energy and I think another part that we've not talked about in regards to Hubbard, the connection between our animals and our human race, and how delicate of a balance, but how powerful is the connection. Because I think post that tragedy, having the incredible honor and opportunity to represent Newtown, I have seen how animals have become such a therapy, such a tonic, such an opportunity for people to move away from the tumult and the turmoil that seems to hit our news every year, every day, to be able to realize that an animal doesn't care if you're a Democrat or you're Republican or independent. Here's the reality. If you show an animal that you love them, they will return that in kind. And isn't that just a wonderful human connection? So when I talk about economic development, you're absolutely right. There are concerns in regards that we might lose revenue. But if we're able to build a center of convention, education, and interaction, and feed it into the awareness on the deep river and the unique, delicate balance of trouts and fishermen's, an opportunity. I think it is economic development, but in a different context. So I appreciate your question, and it is very important to me to understand that our municipalities do not lose the opportunity to be able to offset tax burden on overwrought taxpayers in the state of Connecticut and also in Newtown.
Thank you for that excellent and detailed answer, Senator. The testimony that I'm referring to seems to speak in opposition to these conveyances based on the grounds that it is interfering with open space and the environment. And my question really is whether or not the folks that have submitted this testimony are just confused about what's happening here. Because based on everything that we've heard and just the plain reading of the two conveyances, it seems to me it's moving in that direction. So I would just take this moment to encourage those folks that have submitted testimony in opposition to reach out to the committee if they have questions about what's happening here so that we can clarify. Because for me, frankly, the way I've always viewed conveyances as long as I've been in the legislature is as long as the right amount of money is changing hands between the state and the town and so forth, and fair market value is maintained, which is not the case here. These are already conveyed properties. The change of use is less important, but the other key ingredient for me is that there's no significant legitimate opposition to the conveyances. And, so I see opposition testimony that to me, it's a flag that we've got to investigate. And I would really like to hear from those folks so that I make sure that we're not missing anything on our end. It seems to me that I think that they've misinterpreted what's happening here. And I hope that's the case, because it really does sound like a move in the proper direction. And I totally agree about the notion of economic development coming from people being attracted to this beautiful scenery and part of our state. I'm already excited about going to check it out and seeing this educational barn, for example. So thank you very much, Senator. I appreciate your comments today.
And Senator Sampson, if I may, I really do appreciate the process. And before you came in, I shared with my introduction that as a longtime GAE member, conveyance was done very, very differently. And this is an opportunity for transparency and accountability, and to be able to have all voices be heard, and not what has sometimes occurred in the past. So I agree with you. I will look forward to reading those testimonies, and I do believe that if the way you articulated it, it is understanding the same thing. Maybe it's a misunderstanding of the past conveyance and the restriction and support of it, but nonetheless, I think it's an opportunity for transparency and accountability, and I say that repeatedly because this process is important, and I think this is a process where it has garnered tremendous community support. And for me, as a voice of my constituency, I am up here advocating in support of both of them. But I would be happy to answer any questions of those individuals that have submitted testimony. I will personally review them and be happy to follow up and make myself available as well, sir.
Thank you so much, Senator Huang. And if you can share those documents that you mentioned with us, we can share it with the entire committee. That'd be great.
Absolutely, ma'am.
Thank you, and thank you for engaging with us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, there's one more question for you, Representative Gucker.
Sorry about that. I'm hiding all the way down here. I chose not to move down when the music stopped. I figured we have to find our seats, so I was already set up here. Thank you, Senator Wong, for this. As you may or may not know, I am a huge environmentalist. In fact, I pride myself on doing all that we can for the environment, at the same time also ensuring that we have open space, passive recreation opportunities, because even though we may not look at economic development as brick and mortar, sometimes open space and passive recreation does the very same thing. It gives opportunities for future generations to really respect and understand what the environment's about, the importance of the environment as we see global change, global environmental changes happening in our society. So I am always supportive of such things. Just a couple questions that I wanted to clear up. Is it my understanding that, forgive me, I have to put my glasses back on here. 15662 is a past conveyance that we are looking to amend. But I kind of got confused with 1564. I'm understanding that's a new conveyance, or is that a past conveyance as well?
Representative Gucker, thank you for the question. And I think the first relates to 1562. The land was originally conveyed in 2004 with the intention of being able to convert what was then the sanitarium and the open infrastructure of that existed in Newtown into parcel spaces that could be used. And this parcel of land of 6 Commerce Road was deemed to be considered for economic development, even though it was open space and adjoining and a downslope to the waterway of the Deep River. And 1564, the Hubbard Sanctuary Foundation was also conveyed, I believe, in 20. 16, and by an act of this legislature to be able to create the sanctuary of, I think it was 44.6 acres. So the land have all been conveyed. This is one for 1562 to change it from economic development to a use of open space and recreational use. And that would allow, as I said, the change to maintain and preserve that open space. But we address the economic development in the environmental advocacy that you have touted, that it can be a win-win to the taxpayers of the community, despite losing the designation of economic development. In 1564, the idea was to just change the language, because the new barn that was going to be built that can serve as kind of an engine of eco education and awareness and convention to kind of further the mission of animal sanctuary, as well as pollinator gardens and land sustainability and open space preservation. That is an opportunity where the nonprofit deemed that they had tremendous nonprofit support from the community, from donors, but they realized they may have to go to a financial institution to be able to have a loan, to be able to continue fulfilling that mission. So that came out to the language that the conveyance needed to be changed with the guidance from the Attorney General's office, which I'm very grateful to Ms. Passmore on, is to be able to articulate that we don't lose the mission of the sanctuary and the nonprofit status, while at the same time being able to fulfill the mission of borrowing money to complete the continual mission that they want, to be able to build a building as a convention, as well as an economic center of development and education and awareness. But both of them have been conveyed already. This is just a change. There's no change of money. There's no change of state funds in that, sir.
And I thank you for that clarity, because I'm going through each individual bill here to ensure that we're covering all our bases. I will say I do have concerns with the using it as collateral. What assurances we have to ensure that, with construction of said barn or any other construction up there, that these properties that we are looking to turn into a much better use, in my opinion, would we have that we wouldn't be losing these two alone? Heaven forbid we fall on financial hard times with this organization, and in a case we lose these properties.
I think that's a very important question. I think that's where the conveyance was addressing the concern. So we were able to get guidance from the Attorney General's office. And I think what you'll see is the financial reporting that was offered by the sanctuary. And in fact, talking about the way it is run, you will hear later today that this organization has fulfilled an incredible community mission. But that being said, it has also garnered the recognition as being one of the best run nonprofit businesses in the country. But to answer your question, that is absolutely a legitimate public interest question. And I think this came about because the bank that was willing to do it did it as part of the community philanthropy, which they're very well known for, and understanding as community partners the important mission that they have to fulfill. But this language allows some aspect of protection. So I don't know the exact legal definition, but it does provide some protection, as you articulated, in regards to collateralized asset protection for the loaning institution. So you're absolutely right to address it. And we did painstakingly go through with the Attorney General's office and their guidance and legal advice to be sure that this threads the needle to accommodate the public interest, but also the economic and collateralized interest that you articulated as a safeguard.
Well, I want to thank you for those clarifications, and I will look forward to more testimony on that. As somebody who actually does a lot of outdoor passive recreation, I have gone up to the former Fairfield Hills and, utilize the sidewalks and the walking things. I guess one of the sidebars of getting a new puppy is it needs to be walked a lot, and you always go out to go find some new places to go and get some new experiences at it. So I thank you for the answers to your questions, and I will look forward to more testimony.
Thank you, Representative Gucker, and I would wholly invite you to experience it. As I said, owning a new puppy, getting an opportunity to experience what I've just described, words cannot do justice to the beauty of the setting. May I only throw one caution in this growing season: be wary of ticks. They're everywhere.
It's funny that you bring that up. We just did I am in the process of doing such a project in our community. And yes, we went to go view nature and see the eagles that are living there. And yes, I did come home with 5 new ticks. And as a Lyme disease survivor, I can say, yes, exactly. You're right. We need to check. But thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. I think, don't see any other questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And next we have Representative Belinsky. Good afternoon, Representative.
Thank you, Senator. What I'm going to do is be a little bit less flowery in how I describe our conveyances before us right now. Let me just begin. You'll get the gist of what I'm saying, and you may also find that some of the unanswered questions at this point in time are about to be answered. Good afternoon, Senator Gadkar Wilcox, Rep. Dayton, as chairs of this committee, the ranking members, Senator Sampson and my friend Representative Carney, and all distinguished members of this particular committee. It's an honor to testify in support of two Newtown bills today. Also, I would like to conclude my testimony in a little bit by calling the committee's attention to a potential administrative inconsistency that relates to these two very distinctly separate property matters. So there are actually answers, and they were discovered actually over the weekend in my final review of documents, and my first review of the second bill, which came up rather suddenly. But regarding Senate Bill 1562, an act changing the authorized use of a parcel of state land previously conveyed to the town of Newtown, I offered my unqualified support for this town requested. This is a partnership where the town has asked for a change in this conveyance deed restriction. It initially was presented to the Newtown delegation back on November 1st of 2024, and it was serviced by the Newtown delegation on behalf of the First Selectman and the Board of Selectmen, as well as the Board of the Legislative Council of the town of Newtown, to change prior conveyed property which exists at 6 and 8 Commerce Road from an economic development deed restriction to one of open space recreation. This property is distinct in that it is comprised of tax assessor information, which I will categorize as actually 2 parcels, one being map, block, and lot number 38-1-21-1, and the second 38-1-20-2. They comprise what initially was referred to as 6 Commerce, but it's actually a subdivided piece of a 1993 conveyance, which was then reconveyed and reapportioned in 2004. So that particular plot of land, those 2 parcels, which are now 1, have been the subject of 29 years of attempted economic development, but the land itself is landlocked. It has no access there is no through road in there, and until such time as the Catherine Violet Hubbard Animal Sanctuary began to break ground on its improvements and cut a driveway in between the 6 parcel and the Catherine Violet Hubbard conveyance property, which I might add is map block lot number 37-3-14. So we do have 3 distinct pieces of property here being spoken of and historically having been referred to as 2. That is a technical issue. It probably occurred in a clerical error that could have occurred as much as 29 years ago. It's, I believe, easy to correct. So for argument's sake, this land that we're talking about in 1562 was initially intended to become something called Newtown Tech Park, but it had no access. It sits in an aquifer zone. There are environmental sensitivities, including threatened species that live in that pristine meadow. And because of its lack of access, its aggressive slopes, et cetera, like that, it's something the town of Newtown could never market. And then when we did have a couple of proposals that were entertained, very frankly, they were not appropriate to the property, particularly in light of the fact that they were uphill from a pristine Class 1 trout stream, one of only 7 in the state, as well as abutting the sanctuary, which is, I've been heard to say as far back as 2013, a piece of sacred ground because of the way it's dedicated and the love that's gone into making it what it is today. It truly is, as Senator Wong said, a unique and very beautiful place. It's actually a great place for reflection. People go there by themselves all the time with their thoughts. And then on weekends, everybody gathers for large community celebrations of, environmental and animal education and fulfillment and enrichment. So the sanctuary is a very sacred place. So long story short, the last set of drawings that came through were for a multi-story apartment building, which loomed over this sanctuary property and had to be tucked into the corner of the conveyed parcel to avoid the wetlands, the sensitive areas, and there is a part-time stream that flows through the property as well. So it was inappropriate. It was tabled. There was a lot of community opposition to it, and the Board of Selectmen and the first Selectman's office and the community concurred that it was appropriate. And I do have the letter asking for this conveyance change, not addition, change. So Senator Wong was 100% correct. This land is to be preserved as a beautiful high meadow on a piece of very beautiful, sensitive land that happens to be uphill of a lot of other very sensitive, beautiful land. So that's the story behind 1562. So regarding Senate Bill 1564, an act amending the prior conveyance of a parcel of state land to the Catherine Violet Hubbard Foundation, I do offer my support to the intent of this bill and the amendment of the state's prior conveyance and the removal of the deed restriction to lease rather than be able to own and therefore finance the future development of the facilities that will complement the sanctuary's new home as it's built up, which it's actively in the process of doing right now, is serviced perfectly well here. As I did refer before, 1564, as it was conveyed by Governor Malloy and accepted by the Hubbards, and it came to us in a conveyance in 2014. It had already been reserved as Department of Agriculture land with a hold on it. And it was appropriate because of its location and its scenic beauty and the access to water and all the rest of that as being something appropriate for a sanctuary of the type that we are discussing here today. It has always been identified by the assessor's map block lot number 373-14. At the same time that was either reconveyed in 14 or perhaps at the time of the original conveyance in 1993, associated paperwork was published that also referred to this parcel as 8 Commerce Road. And therein lies the administrative matter of attention that I bring to the committee's attention, because in essence, what we have the town's property that's about to be conveyance revised, constituting these 2 other parcels and designated as 6/8 Commerce Road. But the business address of the Catherine Violet Hubbard Foundation is actually 8 Commerce Road, which, if we were to look at the map, is not in numeric sequence with the other properties along that section of Commerce Road. So there will be a need for a technical revision. It will have to happen at the local level, but it'll also have to flow through corresponding documents in order to make this conveyance what I'll term clean and easy to understand and effective legally in perpetuity. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But I stand ready to answer questions. I have to confess to being the one that caught this mistake. I was alarmed when I first caught this mistake because it happened very, very, very late in the game. And it in no way changes the intent, the purpose, or the higher calling of these 2 parcels. It's just a matter of making sure we're administratively crossing our T's and dotting our I's in the right place, ma'am. So any questions about anything?
Thank you so much, Representative Belinsky, and thank you for that history and context. That's extremely helpful. I just wanted to clarify. So for in SB 1562, there's 2 parcels of land actually that were both conveyed as one, but they're actually 2 separate parcels, just to make that okay.
They were conveyed. I don't know if they were conveyed as one or if they're conveyed together, but they were both deeded to the town of Newtown. The first parcel, which is 38-1-21-1, if you look at the surveyor's maps and the tax collector's maps, it is referred to in its borders, and it's very, very strangely shaped, a little bit like Idaho, with a big pointy top, and then it flattens out. That is referred to on all of the mapping as 6 Commerce Road. Right? It is the property that shares the driveway with the next door Hubbard Foundation's property and the sanctuary. On the other side of 6 is a more rectangular piece of property, which all the mapping reflects as being 8 Commerce Road. And you know, I spent most of Saturday and Saturday night on the phone with the first selectman, asking him to explain to me how the heck this can be so incongruent. And there's no explanation for other than the fact that that there was a clerical mistake someplace, and we need to fix it. That's all. So, and that's really necessary for us to be able to do this and do it right and have it stick in perpetuity.
Thank you. And Representative Dave?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative, for your testimony. Um, has there been a title search that has been done to kind of see if we can, or a survey of some sort to make sure that we can address to fix this? Because I'm not a property lawyer and don't even play one on TV. So I don't know how to fix this. And obviously we will have to get the correct folks to do this. But do you have any sense, or did your first selectman have any sort of advice about how to fix this?
That's a very good question, Representative Dayton, and the answer to it is the title search, the mapping, the surveying, all of that has been done. And the one thing that's consistent in every piece of paperwork I've seen from the 1990s to today are these three parcel numbers. So I've been told by the town attorney that it is an administrative fix and it is an obvious error. But assessments have been done on both of these pieces of property. Title searches have been done on them. And due diligence has been done that all supports these properties by the respective bill number for what you see in my testimony and what will be followed up on with the committee clerks and anybody else who needs to be provided with the correct documents so that we can first look backwards and then move it all forward. It's interesting that I was not aware of the Attorney General's involvement. I'm surprised that nobody up there saw it because I'm not an attorney and I can barely read an assessor's map because it's always oriented in a way where I have to stand on my head and lean on my left shoulder while my right knee is tucked behind my back. I just can't read one of those maps. So if I were to show you my paperwork, you'd see I've taken these maps and I've drawn, with my own crayons and highlighters. I've drawn references and lines around the whole thing to check, and triple check every single one of these things. And what I'm describing to you is there very clearly in black and white, and on my maps, yellow and red.
So even the survey was incorrect, you're saying?
Pardon me?
The previous survey, because I think the assessor's map might be a bit different than an actual survey. Because a survey should be a little bit more accurate in my opinion.
Yeah, well, it might affect the appraisal in its search for comp values and things like that. But the one thing that does not waver is the outer property lines. So they're very clearly defined and they haven't moved in decades. So the three parcels, as I referred to in 1562, 38-1-21-1 and 38-1-20-2, they contiguously are what the town of Newtown were conveyed for the tech park way back when. And then by Governor Malloy's hand and through conveyance back in 2014, the piece of land that is designated 37-3-14 and is by Senate Bill 1564, the parcel that we're amending the conveyance to the Catherine Violet Hubbard Foundation in order to obtain financing as opposed to leasing rights. That identification, those borders have not changed since the day of, or for that matter, before the conveyance. So it truly is a technical a technicality that, that we will, help the state of Connecticut straighten out and fix by whatever means necessary.
Okay, yeah, just so we can kind of figure it out. I think the other clarification, because they're also talking about doing a loan associated with this, would that be a loan from the municipality? Or, I mean, would the municipality be the undertaker of that loan rather than the nonprofit? I was a bit confused about
No,
that.
no, Representative, what they're talking about, the foundation itself, you know, has always been very grateful for the conveyance. The town of Newtown is separate from it. The conveyance of the sanctuary we're referring to in 1564 is in the name of the Catherine Violet Hubbard Foundation for that sanctuary. And the financing that will be sought through a commercial lender in town. There has been discussion. There is a path forward. The first structures on the property have actually been raised thanks to the philanthropic contributions of very generous folks in the community. And now it's time to get to the sanctuary piece of it, to complement all of the educational outreach and enrichment that occurs in that will occur in the learning barn, which is close to having a ribbon cut.
So is the repurpose a condition precedent before this loan would be able to be taken? Because I just try to understand how a transfer of property is collateral. The transfer's already happened, so we're just changing the use. Just trying to understand how will they be able to get the loan?
They will be able to get the loan, and this is the condition of getting the loan. It right now has it has a restriction on it that assumes a lease. There never was a lease. This land was conveyed by the state of Connecticut for a sum of $0, you know, back in 2014. And again, things were happening quickly, and nobody probably saw that reference. And I don't believe that it's of any significant legal distinction that's going to change the purpose of the land or the ability. Actually, it creates the ability to borrow on the land as collateral towards the future.
So if there's a default on the loan and the land is the collateral, would there be an ability if the lender, the commercial lender, obtained the property in the event of a default, would they be able to then sell the land to another party for commercial development? I'm just trying to connect all the dots here, and I'm sorry if I'm missing something.
You don't need to be sorry. I've asked all those questions of myself in the mirror over the weekend repeatedly. No, because even in the case of a default, which will not happen, this is a very well supported and remarkably well run foundation. But if it were to occur, the one thing that would stand in perpetuity is its current deed restrictions. It's an animal sanctuary, and that's how it's been deeded. So it won't be available for what we would call true economic development, even though, you know, colloquially at the town level, we spend a lot of time talking about it as being equivalent economic development, because rather than having structures or industry, we have ecotourism. It's still, if it were to be taken by the bank, it would still be restricted in a way that's consistent with the way it is right now. And the next move would probably be for the bank to come back to the state of Connecticut and ask for some revision to that, because nothing can be built on it that I would consider to be heavy economic development. just because of the way it's already been treated. So, uh, but I think that to answer your concerns, because neither one of us are real estate lawyers, and I certainly can't read the map, but I think that in the process of amending what needs to be amended so that there's clarity to all the documents and they all tie back to the exact same language. We do ask counsel, just exactly what the changes will do and what we could potentially suspect. So there will be another bite at the apple at some point in time, where I believe, will need to approve that new language, which will, I hope, exist outside of what we're doing today, which is nothing more than revising a deed restriction on a conveyed piece of land.
So thank you for that. There was a piece of testimony regarding having housing, an amendment to include housing on as the allowed purpose. And I just wanted to know if you had an opinion on that piece of testimony and making such an amendment.
I try not to express my opinions in cases. My job, I'm an elected public official. My job is to represent the people that, that are in my constituency. I checked all the testimony. I read every single piece of testimony that was there last night at about midnight. The piece that you're referring to, I have not read, but I will. I will tell you that if you were to look at the other testimony that's in there, when I read it, there was one piece of testimony that was sort of off in left field, talking about big government and, just sort of a rant. I disregard that as being in the wrong place. But certainly every other piece of testimony that I saw in regard to both 1562 and 1564 were supportive of the open space, the preservation, and the non-commercial uses of development, which, by the way, the town of Newtown, in its letter to the delegation, instructed the delegation to go ahead and make this change.
Okay. Yeah, the testimony that I'm referring to is Charlie Gardner, who's actually going to be testifying, it looks like, later on today. But just wanted to ask your
I will,
plan for that.
you have my word. I will address that piece of testimony directly with the individual who submitted it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that plans for housing on the property have been opposed to on the ground that they don't qualify as the economic development. So just wanted to kind of
Understood.
clarify that. Okay, well, I think that's it. Thanks.
So I also will. I'm not certain that the representative asked the question before about how many acres are constituted in this 6/8 parcel. That number is 41.76 acres. So all of the technical and survey data is actually in the original applications to the committee.
Thank you. Sorry, Representative Belinsky. There's one more question, Representative Gucker.
Thank you, Representative, for clarifying a lot of that. As somebody who probably cut his teeth on trying to do more preservation and less development in front of zoning boards and appeals and things of that sort, the points you bring up are very valid. And I hope as we go through discussing this property today, we can clarify a lot of it and hopefully come to a mutual understanding. I personally get concerned when I hear deed restriction, because I have seen many times in the city of Danbury, where deed restrictions don't get honored and just really don't apply. In fact, a lot of time deed restrictions fall upon the neighbors and the community to yell and scream, and not so much the zoning board or anything else to ensure that that's what happens. So am I to understand, Senator Wong alluded to that, or had stated, that this was originally conveyed for economic development,
Yes, sir.
and we will now be switching it, which I am all in favor of, as a recreation open space type use. But under its current use, if we do not change things now, it would still be for economic development.
If nothing changed, it would still be for economic development. Mind you, it's been earmarked for economic development as Newtown Tech Park for 29 years. It's not attracting any viable economic development because the parcel is a matrix of sensitive and aquifer and protected species lands, piece of pristine meadowland that very frankly does not have road access. So it, if for instance, to, sort of back into an answer to Representative Dayton's question from before, how I feel about it is much less important than the fact that in every planning and zoning decision that is made at the town level, considerations for traffic access, egress, drainage, sewage capacity, potable water, and the visible ability for something to be architecturally appropriate for the community in which it's being built. We in the town of Newtown, and it's not we as in me, because this is happening at the municipal level, but there's not been any success in developing this piece of land. And there is, there will be future conversations because the land that it's contiguous to, which used to be a part of the Fairfield Hills State Hospital property, is in the process of being sort of divided up right now to this day. And the town of Newtown does have an interest in actually a couple of other parcels on the other side of this very large property that are tremendously appropriate in their access to the highway, utilities, their location on a road that is built for with enough capacity to handle a couple of hundred additional motor vehicle trips a day. There are way better places in Newtown to put an apartment building than in a meadow.
And if I could follow up, would you also say that the subject property is uplands of sensitive environmental areas, watercourses, and other things that if it was, say, to remain in its current state for economic development, that development would have a negative impact on the lower lands and the lower environmental concerns you have?
I believe that that most forms of what I will term as heavy economic development would have a negative outcome for the properties that exist down the hill. Yes, there's a natural flow and drainage. As I said, a part-time stream that even does run through there. If you walk the property and you walk the driveway that's been built by the Hubbard Foundation, you will see that it has culverts where water does pass, beneath the driveway itself. So it is not a static piece of property. It is a piece of property that is always moving and draining and also absorbing water into the Putatuck Aquifer.
Well, I thank you for that. I know that we have been studying the effects of uplands of sensitive areas and the importance that they play. And I think that is something that we should strongly consider in this application. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you, Representative. Looks like I scared everybody else off.
Yes.
So,
No,
any
I
other
think,
questions?
multiple meetings going on, so
Yes,
folks are up
ma'am.
and down, and I'll see you in a probes a little bit later.
Yeah, we,
But I
we,
think,
we stand ready. I stand ready. Senator Wong stands ready. Representative Fonsello stands ready. And most importantly, that the land people and the leadership of the town of Newtown stand ready. The change is one that's asked for. The change is one that I do believe is totally appropriate. And I do believe that we'll complete it and all be better for it.
thank you so much, Representative. Since we are well in, no, thank you very much for your testimony. See you later. Since we're done with our first hour, and we are going to go back and forth between our elected and non-elected folks. We're going to skip down to number 13, Amy Blaymore Patterson. Is she on the Zoom? Okay. Great. We'll go back to elected. Representative Jason Bushbaum. I saw him here. I thought, there he is.
Thank you. Good afternoon, co-chairs Gadkar, Wilcox, and Dathan, ranking members Sampson and Carney, and members of the Government Oversight Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support with a slight amendment of HB 7281, an act amending a prior conveyance of a parcel of state land to the town of Southbury to change the restrictions on ownership and leasing of said parcel. I'm Jason Buxbaum, state representative for the 69th House District, which includes the towns of Southbury, Bridgewater, Roxbury, and New Milford. House Bill 7281 was generated based on a request from the Southbury Board of Selectmen and concerns a portion of the Southbury Training School property known as the Personnel Village. HB 7281 would amend existing legislation. By way of background, this property was identified years ago by a local nonprofit named Pierce Hollow Village as a site for affordable senior housing development in the town of Southbury. In 2013, the legislature adopted Special Act 13-23, later amended by Public Act 16-1, to allow the conveyance of the property to Southbury for housing purposes. The existing law also allows Southbury to lease the property to a nonprofit for purposes of senior housing and was tailored towards the Pierce Hollow project. Pierce Hollow Village commenced planning a senior housing development at the site, which had widespread community support. Unfortunately, state and national funding became limited for this type of project as priorities shifted. And sadly, based on that reality, Pierce Hollow Village dissolved in September 2023. And that brings us to the need for HB 7281. At this time, if the town of Southbury wanted to pursue a housing development at the subject property, it is limited and it can only lease the property for senior housing purposes. The purpose of HB 7281 is to remove the senior housing restriction that exists under current law. This would give Southbury the needed ability to explore alternative housing opportunities that may be available for the property, which could still include senior housing. Southbury is seeking greater flexibility as to the use and manner of future development and is requesting the changes outlined in HB 7281 to ensure that it does not have to return to the legislature each time a new housing potential is identified. Therefore, I ask the members of the committee to support HB 7281. I am requesting one modification to the proposed legislation. Standard language was added to HB 7281, which would require that any funds received by the town from a sale or lease of the property be paid to the state. I respectfully request that this language be modified. Specifically, I'm requesting that the requirement that all funds from a lease or sale be paid to the state be amended so that Southbury could recover costs expended in furtherance of a transfer to it and in pursuit of development, including any ongoing costs of ownership. As stated already, HB 7281 is simply amending current law, and the existing law, which already allows for the leasing of the property, does not contain this additional language. As written, this law and the existing legislation requires Southbury to engage in certain activities and expend funds to allow for the transfer of the subject property to it. including a survey and environmental impact evaluation, which could then result in additional terms and conditions in accordance with subsection C of the legislation. In addition to those costs, future costs of ownership, including for solicitation and preparation for leasing or sale and development of the property, are unknown at this time. Under a lease scenario, Southbury would retain the responsibility of ownership, and costs to it during the lease are unknown until a lease is negotiated. Therefore, given the circumstances presented by the Southbury Training School property and the current legislation, including removing the state from the burdens and costs of ownership of the property, I request that the committee consider this proposed modification. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony on HB 7281. I urge the members of the committee to support the legislation along with this slight change outlined today. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Representative. I had an opportunity about a month ago to go check out the property and on my visit to Southbury Training School. I understand from another piece of testimony here that Southbury has some of the highest number of seniors in the state. And there is a big need for affordable senior housing. Can you highlight why you think this need has not been able to be met? And with this repurposing of this conveyance, how are we going to be able to achieve that for the senior residents of Southbury?
Sure. Southbury does have one of the highest senior populations in the state of Connecticut. And this project, which was always intended to be an affordable senior housing project, has had widespread community support, and I'm one of the strongest supporters of it over the years. And we've advocated for it. We've advocated to the state for funding. We actually allocated a significant portion of ARPA funds toward this project as sort of to try and entice further funding. And those efforts didn't work. So what we're left with now is we're left with legislation that limits that it can only be used for senior housing, and the types of funding that would be available for affordable senior housing have dried up. So the only way, in my view, to actually see some activity there and perhaps move towards that goal is to loosen the restrictions, to provide broader language in the statute, to allow, like what we're asking for is generally that it be permitted to be used for housing purposes. So then the town has the flexibility to evaluate what's out there. And, you know, if it was up to me, I would still love to see senior housing or a component of senior housing at that site, because it is such an important need in the community.
So just to clarify, is the financing issues with it being affordable housing, or is it the issues in regards to senior housing?
I believe it's with regard to senior affordable housing, those things together.
So if we
That's my understanding. I'm not directly involved in the project, but I was on the Board of Selectmen before I came here for a number of years, and that was always the concern in the discussion, and why Pierce Hollow Village ended up dissolving back in 2023.
So if the change was made to affordable multi-generational housing or senior housing, would that satisfy the need? Because we all know there is a huge need for affordable housing in our state for folks of all generations.
Right. So the concern is, and you'll hear from some town officials later on in your agenda, the first selectman and the selectman here. I think one of the concerns with limiting the language in the legislation is setting up a framework where the town doesn't have the flexibility to explore what opportunities may exist. So the reason we're sitting here today, 12 years after this legislation was passed, was because the legislation is so narrow. So the town hasn't been able to engage in any further discussions or evaluate any other opportunities. By removing those restrictions and allowing that flexibility, the town can then move into that direction. And I don't think we know the full potential until that's done and that can start to be explored by the community.
Are you aware of any sort of approaches to the town by developers for non-affordable housing. So if we took away this restriction, are you aware that maybe the town would be able to then sell the land to and make money off of it to a developer who is going to use it for non-affordable housing?
So as the legislation's written, I don't think the town can sell the land and make a profit. And the suggestion I'm making for an amendment is so that the town can sort of recoup its costs. So the town has some incentive to spend money to get something done. So I don't see this as a highly profitable enterprise for the town. Like it's supposed to be, you know, for housing. I personally am not aware. I can tell you, during my time since I've been up here since January, and during my time on the Board of Selectmen for 9 years previously, we've had a number of ideas come before us. Obviously, the senior affordable housing proposal from Pierce Hollow Village, which would be a wonderful development if it could be funded. We've had a veterans proposal. There is a group, a nonprofit, that has explored the training school, not just Personnel Village, but other aspects of the training school, to have like a veteran training facility and to use Personnel Village for veteran housing. I've had a group approach me in the last number of months about artists and having some sort of housing for them. So my concern about limiting the language is it limits the ability to explore all these sorts of ideas and options. And frankly, I think what this project ends up being, I'm not a developer, is probably some combination of various things. And you really can't begin to explore that and look into it until the restrictions are eased.
Okay, just another question. Under 830G, has Southbury received a moratorium for affordable housing?
No, it is not.
So this could potentially hurt it. Like if we take away land that is deemed to be for affordable housing, presumably the town would like to be able to get its moratorium, and changing this would further could potentially further hurt it.
I think changing it could pave the way and allow for different types of housing, including affordable housing. And the first selectman's the first selectman's written testimony he submitted, and he'll be here, talks about how affordable housing can be part of this. The problem now is, you know, the town can't even explore those avenues because of the way it's written. And the concern about restricting pigeonholing into a certain thing is, you know, 12 years ago, we all thought this was a wonderful idea. The state was on board. And then as soon as all this went through, the funding dried up at the state level. So we don't know what tomorrow brings. And we're just looking for an opportunity so we can begin that process, or the town can begin that process of exploring the avenues that might be available at this property.
Yeah, I just have, I guess, the personal, just trying to understand how we're going to be able to satisfy the need of building affordable housing in our state. Because if we change this, the land could be acquired and, you know, a bunch of multi-million-dollar homes sold on it, and then we're not helping our housing needs in our state by building multi-generational housing.
Oh, can I?
Go ahead,
Sir,
please.
no,
Yeah.
I understand that concern, and I don't think anyone envisions this property being used in that way. But what I would say is, over the last 12 years, we haven't fulfilled that need either because of the restrictions that currently exist. So easing the restrictions gives the opportunity for potential development at the site.
Got it. So any restriction could be changed, so it could be 30% mandated affordable housing for as a new build. Does that sound right?
Does what sound?
No, if we change it to take away the restriction,
Right.
we would fall under the 830G, and because you don't have a moratorium, it would say that we need to make sure that a certain percentage of whatever is being built will have to fall under that deemed affordable housing in order to qualify.
I think that's right.
Okay. I'm going to pass back to my co-chair who is here.
Thank you, Representative Dathan. Representative Gucker.
Thank you, and thank you for that testimony. As we were going through this, I was looking at the letters of opposition that have been submitted to this committee. And I believe, as you've already testified, that the original intent of the transfers was for affordable senior housing. What would be the issue, and forgive me if I'm being redundant on the chairwoman's questions, if we just remove the word senior and left it as affordable? I understand the idea of opening up for more opportunities for the town, but again, I also share concerns with the 830G component. Right now, what is your 830G deficit or surplus that you have in the town at this particular time? Do you happen to know that?
I don't have that information. The other town officials may, or we could get you that information from our planning department.
Because I also do share the idea that we would be taking, we always have the best intentions involved. As somebody who has dealt with a lot of residential developers, there are ways that what's most profitable gets built and not what's sometimes most necessary. And believing from some of the numbers that I've seen, I think affordability would be probably the best focus. But then also at the same time, once you trigger that 830G component, sadly, public input gets taken away on what gets built. So if we do take away the idea of this being an affordable situation as opposed to just opening up for development, then again, you may be hamstringing unintentionally the public's ability to be able to say that this is not a project that is worthy in our community. So I would entertain or ask that maybe you would look into just removing the senior part of it, maybe just go into affordable, what would be affordable. And it is relative to what is in your community. And then possibly that would help you with becoming more compliant with the affordability issues. Because I know, serving on the Planning and Development Committee, there's a lot of discussions up here as to what the legislature is going to ask ask what the communities do. And I would certainly hate to take away some of that decision making from the town and actually putting it onto the state.
So I'm not sure if there was a.
So I guess the
but-
question would be, would there be an issue of just, if we were to amend it to say, take out senior affordability and just make it affordability? And that being said, it would then probably take in some of those seniors in need, but I think it would open up possibilities. Would there be any problem with that?
I think that's a question that's better for the local town officials. This is a request from the Southbury Board of Selectmen to sort of ease what was happening here at the property so that these sorts of opportunities could be explored, including affordable housing. The other thing I'll mention is the existing legislation conveys this property to the town of Southbury for housing purposes. And then it can be leased for senior housing purposes. The word affordable actually doesn't appear in the existing legislation. But I'll agree with you. I said it myself. I mean, that the intent was there was a project identified that was actually going to happen there. And unfortunately, it didn't. I think it'd be a great project for the community if it could get its funding.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you,
Thank you,
Madam Chair, for
Representative.
the indulgence.
Thank you, Representative Gucker. Representative Vale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Representative.
Afternoon.
Apologize, I was out of the room with constituents when you submitted your testimony. When was the original conveyance, if you don't mind?
2013. It
2013.
actually, this property actually has not been conveyed to the town. There is a conveyance bill that allows the property to be conveyed to the town when the town essentially requests it based on certain conditions. So the
Okay.
town does not currently own this property.
All right. So if it had done the original provisions or guidelines of the original conveyance, then they would come and ask to be conveyed at a later date, or would automatically be conveyed if you had hit the affordable housing piece you were talking about earlier.
So on the prior legislation, what we were waiting for to take title to the property was for the group that was developing the project to get their funding to begin development. And then the town, and First Selectman could clarify if I'm wrong, but then the town could take the necessary steps. Town didn't want to take on ownership of the property if we didn't know exactly what it was going to be used for. But what happened over time was, with the funding drying up, we did an amendment to this legislation in 2016 to try and assist the project. We gave, like I said earlier, some ARPA funds. We didn't actually spend the ARPA funds. We allocated ARPA funds to try and assist with the project. That didn't work out. So the town had never actually took ownership of the property.
Okay. So now they want to take ownership of the property, and without the stipulations that they want to take out the restrictions that currently exist to no restrictions. What is the?
No, the property was always supposed to be conveyed to the town for housing purposes. And just for Representative Dathan said you were at the training school and looked at the property, but for those who don't know, this is what's called Personnel Village. This is where the workers at the training school used to live when the training school was, much more fully operational than it is today. There's structures, there's infrastructure, there's roads, and it was identified as a good site for this kind of development because it was housing already. So the town in this request is not asking to change that restriction. They're asking to change the part where it can only lease it to a facility for senior housing.
So it'd be housing no matter what?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. I don't share my colleagues' opinion on government oversight of what we here in Hartford. I think municipalities should have much more oversight over their own development. That being said, when you're getting land from the state, you're going to certainly be under even a bigger microscope. So I'll be happy. I'm sure these questions are better suited for the first selectman and anyone else who's up here. But I appreciate your advocacy, and we'll listen more about it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I do have one quick question as well. With regard to the town's planning commission, and maybe this is better also for the first selectman, so let me know. But was their recommendation was also to remove senior? Is that correct, from the town's own planning commission?
Yeah, I believe last year they recommended removing the word senior, and this is sort of what came down the pike thereafter. This was submitted to us in January from the Board of Selectmen this removes the word senior. Actually, I take that back. The recommendation last year, I was on the board last year, so I'm trying to remember exactly. The recommendation was not to remove senior. It was to replace senior with multifamily or multi-generational. And that was always a concern of mine because while this certainly will likely be that, it precludes senior. And I think senior is an important element of this. And, I think we still need to at least keep open the opportunity that seniors in town would be able to utilize this area.
Understandable. Yeah, of course. But if you remove the word senior, then it just opens it up for both multi-purpose,
housing.
multi-generational,
Both.
senior, any affordable housing. Okay. Thank you and I don't see other questions. So thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
And I think we're going to go back now to Amy Blaymore Patterson, who's joining us on Zoom.
I'm here, thank you, and I apologize for that delay. I had a connection issue here. Co-chair Gadkar Wilcox and Dathan, Ranking members Sampson and Carney, and distinguished members of the Government Oversight Committee. For the record, I'm Amy Blaymore Patterson, the Executive Director of the Connecticut Land Conservation Council. CLCC is the umbrella organization for the land conservation community and the service organization for the state's 120 or so land trusts. It's heartening for me to listen to all of the discussion with respect to other bills, and to hear the earlier testimony from legislators as well as from many of you recognizing the value of open space to our communities, which is the lens through which I tailor our testimony at CLCC with respect to proposed land transfers. Consistent with that recognition, I submitted written testimonies related to two bills, HB 7282 regarding the Plymouth property, which we oppose, and SB 1565 regarding Sprague property, which we support. For both bills, I addressed 3 points of analysis, which I will quickly summarize. First, whether the property is valuable for conservation, and in both cases, the answer is yes. They both provide important ecological benefits. For the Plymouth property, Plymouth property, it is part of an important state forest system, offering myriad environmental benefits as well as recreational opportunities for the public. For the Sprague property, it is also valuable for conservation. It's in a floodplain and consists of significant upland forest area. The second criteria I used is whether the end use proposed for these properties is specific and appropriate for these valuable public conservation lands. For the Plymouth property, HB 7282, which we oppose, the proposed end use is vague, and there's insufficient specificity as to the intended use of the property and the impacts that it would have on the site and the surrounding environment. This lack of specificity also calls into question the efficacy of a right of reversion. For Sprague, SB 1565, which we support, the proposed end use is land conservation with further protection provided by the floodplain management certificate, which would prevent any development. And finally, quickly, the third criteria is whether the conveyance of the property supports the state's land conservation goals. As you know, the state has set a goal of conserving 21% of its land area by 2023, with the state responsible for conserving 10% of that goal. We have not met that goal, and according to the Council on Environmental Quality, it'll take decades to get there at the current rate of acquisition. With respect to the Plymouth property, HB 7282, we align our testimony with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. As a portion of a state forest system, conveying this land would be a step backwards by conveying land of high conservation value with the myriad benefit it provides to the public and the environment. In contrast, with respect to the Sprague parcel, SB 1565, it has been deemed excess by the Department of Transportation and listed as an opportunity for transfer in the environmental monitor. In that public notice, a specific request for recommendations on how the property may be preserved was also included. I appreciate your consideration of the broader implications of these conveyances and the importance of upholding the public trust in our precious public lands. And thank you again for your indulgence as I was unable to get into this and for the opportunity to address these two important bills. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for that testimony. And you see if there are questions from the committee. Nope. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to go back then to Senator Austin, but I don't see Senator Austin. Oh, she's in me. Okay, so we'll come back. So we'll go Jennifer Hubbard.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairs and distinguished committee members. My name is Jennifer Hubbard. I am the president of the Catherine Violet Hubbard Animal Sanctuary in Newtown, Connecticut. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I've submitted written testimony with regards to Raised Bill 1564 that offers far more detailed background, but I'm here to briefly convey why this amendment is so critical, not just for the sanctuary, but for the communities that we serve. Later this month, we will complete the construction of our educational facility. It's been talked about a couple times earlier in this public hearings. Catherine's Learning Barn. It marks a major milestone for our long-term site plan, and it was only made possible through the contributions of donor support, general reserves, and in-kind contributions from generous trade professionals. It's important to note that while we approached a financial institution for construction financing, as many other organizations and nonprofit organizations are able to secure, we were unable to secure it due to the restrictions tied to the state land deed that was conveyed in 2014. While we found a way forward for this one building, that model is not sustainable as we move into future phases. The next stage of our development, formally approved by the town in 2016, includes a main facility, a veterinary intake center. These structures are essential for expanding our capacity to care for animals, respond to the growing demand from rescue partners, and deliver the programs, the educational programs that so many Connecticut residents have taken advantage of. The amendment before you, drafted in advisement of the state's Attorney General's office, does not expand our footprint or change our purpose. It simply clarifies existing boundaries to our deed restriction so that we can access traditional financing to responsibly complete our approved master plan. With this step, we can also expand our reach, bringing year-round nature-based educational and compassionate programming into urban areas of the state, where opportunities like this are often hard to access. We've demonstrated sound fiscal stewardship. Just this past week, we are awarded the Gold Award from the American Business Association for Nonprofit of the Year, and maintain rooted in a mission of compassion. Programs like our Senior Paw Project help financially insecure older adults keep and care for their beloved pets. And in June, we'll welcome over 12,000 people into Newtown for a 4-hour adoption and free community program. Every day, our volunteers, our staff, and supporters work to ensure that kindness lives at the center of the work we do. This amendment is the key that allows us to keep building on that foundation. Thank you for your time and your thoughtful consideration of Raise Bill 1564. I'm sure there are questions to answer any that you may have.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And it's great to hear how many students are now coming through. I just wondered if you can share a little bit more about, we heard a little bit from Senator Huang about the number of districts that are being, cities and towns that are coming in. But if you can say a little bit more about how many students are now coming through and what was the increase, and maybe also coming from where in the state, that'd be great. Thanks.
So the foundation's mission is to ensure animals live free from harm in native homes and habitats, and we do it by providing direct care to animals. We teach humans, mainly students, in how to care for environments and the animals that call them home, and through environmental stewardship actions. To answer your question specifically at the education portion, we teach about 1,000 students and families annually. We do that at the lack of having a physical structure on our property. It was the need for the educational barn that's under construction right now. All of our programming is weather dependent. And for example, today we had students from Ridgefield coming out to the sanctuary. We had to move that program to the community center because the learning barn's not complete. And so the construction of the learning barn helps us to improve access to towns like Bridgeport, Waterbury, and urban areas that otherwise can't access nature-based programming. That being said, our plan has to always have a main facility that is both an education center and a veterinary intake facility. We were precluded from financing for the learning barn, and so we anticipate that that restriction will remain without the amendment to this.
And those students coming through, how is that? How are they financed?
We pay for it through donors. The foundation has raised over $9 million from donors and grants and private foundations.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Representative Carney?
Thank you very much for your testimony and all the work that you do on what sounds like a wonderful project. So I just have a couple of questions. The first is if you could describe the barn in question and how this conveyance legislation will help you fulfill the mission with that.
Sure. So the barn in question that I noted, that's not impacted by this. When we were ready to construct Catherine's Learning Barn, our educational facility, we had hoped to not tap into our general reserves. And the bank that was willing to extend financing at the 11th hour couldn't because of the deed restriction and the way that it was read. So we decided to move forward because we need a permanent facility so that we can continue to meet the growing demand of our educational programs. The buildings that we will construct in future phases as approved by the town in 2016 is a main facility and a veterinary intake facility. Those two facilities have been accepted into the Living Building Challenge. They're it's an environmental accreditation that is, as of right now, there's one of 70. It's a significant project. It's at the front of our building and will help us further expand our educational programming, but it will also allow us to expand our animal care efforts. Right now, we partner with Connecticut Affordable Housing Communities and deliver services directly into those older adults into their apartments. We help them keep and care for their pets. So the veterinary intake facility will help us expand that beyond what we're doing right now. As of 3 years ago, that was a $14 million project. Clearly, the model that we used to construct the Learning Barn, which is paid for by the foundation, isn't a sustainable model when we start looking at building those two other structures.
All right. No, I appreciate that. I don't have any further questions,
Yeah.
but again, I wanted to thank you for everything you do, and hopefully we can make this happen. So
Great, thanks.
Don't see any other questions. Thank you again, and thank you very much for all that you're doing.
You're welcome.
Sounds wonderful. Okay. And we've Representative Hawks. Sure, please.
All right. Well, good afternoon, Chairwoman Gadkar Wilcox. Did I pronounce that right?
That's right.
All right.
Okay.
And
Good
Representative Dathan. We serve on the Appropriations Committee together, and Ranking Member Carney, Representative Carney. So I'm here today to testify in favor of HB 7282, a land conveyance in Plymouth. I'm here with the interested party, my friend and constituent Dan Gentile. He owns the property that abuts the property in question. He both lives nearby and also operates a business known as Gentiles Campground on the property that abuts the state property in question that we were looking to get conveyed to either him or his business. The reason for that is quite simple. He is looking to do absolutely nothing commercially with the property. Right now, it's actually in sort of in not being, respected. The land and the nature is not being respected because there are kids and teenagers and probably even adults, that are going up there and mistreating the land. They're partying, drinking, doing drugs. It is suspected by Danny here and others that have seen this activity from the campground perspective. And right now it's being mistreated, and there's some trees on the property as well that could pose a risk to his customers on the campground. So for that reason, he is looking to get the land conveyed to him or his business so that he could better maintain the property and put up no trespassing signs to get some of the unwanted people that are misusing the land. I understand from previous testimony that this is something that the state of Connecticut cares about this particular land because it belongs to It's a state park. It's a part of a state park, and and that's fantastic. And we were just looking to make it so that it is not abused in any way the way it is being right now. We have evidence for that. We also submitted all the documentations for all the documentation needed by this committee to the clerk, Mr. Wolf, via email. I did that for my personal email. I'll let Danny also speak a little bit to this matter, and we're happy to answer any questions that you folks may have after that. Yep, the mic's on.
Thank you for, thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you so much for letting me speak on this issue. I appreciate the thing. And I want to be a great steward of the land. My house abuts the land and also the camp abuts, and I've been there my whole life. I've been driving up that mountain my whole life. There's a huge piece of ledge going into this land, so it's very difficult to just access it. But there is one little area where there's been couches, there's been tents, there's been stuff dumped on the land, which is not good for open space. And I feel the same as what Deep said. I want that for open space. I don't want it to be touched. But I'm right there. I've lived there for the camp's been existing since 1968, and I've been there my whole life. I'm an outdoorsman. I love the woods. I love fishing, and I love just being in the environment of outdoors. I love open space. I agree with that 100%. And that's where I want to keep it and be a good steward of the land right there. My house literally touches the land. So I'm there all the time. Numerous times I have to call the police, people in the woods, they go in the woods, they get them out of the woods, at night, bottles and trash and, whatever for party. And, their kids are young and they're going to go find a place in the woods and they're going to party. But it's been multiple times where I've had to deal with that because my house is right there. This land where it is located is literally, it's on the road, but there's literally commercial land behind it and recreational, which we are, in my house. So this little piece of land is blocked from the road to that. Everything behind it doesn't exist it's just, which shows on the map that we're given. It, it's kind of blocked for access. You just have that little parcel. So that's why I figured if it was conveyed, and I would appreciate it if you did that. And I also want to apologize. I would have made it more testimony more intense. I did not know that they needed so much information. I would have did that because this is the first time of me doing this. So I'm a little naive. I just, if I understood that, I would have made it lengthy. So I apologize for that. And if I could answer any questions that or concerns that you have, I'd be glad to.
Thank you both so much. And there are a couple of questions. Representative L.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. You mentioned so this land is part of a state park, or is all of the state park?
So I'm sorry. The state park is across the street from my house. See, Routes 262 splits the state park. There's like 400 plus acres across the street. All this little parcel is when you come up 262 Mount Hope Road, this parcel's on the right side. State park is on the left side.
So most people would go, what state park is it?
I don't know. I know a lot of people park on the bottom of, there's a bad corner which never got fixed. A lot of people get into accidents at the bottom of 262. They park and they climb off the cliffs that are on like Route 8 side of the mountain. I don't know if you're familiar with Thomaston, Connecticut, Route 8.
I know where it is, but
Yeah, I guess there's clubs that go and there's a path in through the woods and they go off the back side of the mountain. They mountain climb off. That's the state park and forest. That's across the street.
So the parcel of land you're talking about, who uses that? Is there any state use other than you talked about people, partying there or whatever they're doing? Is there any formal state use, or is there a pond people can fish? Is there anything? And how many acres are we talking about?
The map says that we given you, it says 10.5, but if you do convey it to me, I'll make sure it gets surveyed and all that. But right now, like I said, 262 splits off State Park Forest. This is that little chunk of 7 to 10 acres, whatever it is, on the right side of 262. So right, and like I said, it's ledge taller than the ceiling. Well, I mean, I've been driving by it my whole life. There's a lot of ledge on the right side of the highway. I mean, on the right side of 262. On the left side, where the State Park and Forest, people go mushroom picking, but that's in the State Park and Forest across the street.
And so are you willing to pay fair market value for that?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
because yeah, that would be not a problem at all.
And with stipulations that you
Not a
would not
problem at all.
develop it?
Not a problem at all. I would
Okay.
agree with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Dathan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for your testimony. You did great for your first time up here, so well done. Just wanted to touch base because it looked like it was 5 acres for $5,000 plus administrative is what we have in our notes, which, seems pretty reasonable, $1,000 per acre. Is that fair market value?
I'm sorry, once again, I don't know, but I will find out what fair market value is and we'll address that. If you let me purchase this, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I didn't research fair market value.
Okay, because that's one of the key issues that we always have at the
Okay.
committee is making
Yeah.
sure that things are fair market value. I don't know, Mr. Gentile, if you had a chance to look at some of the testimony online. I know there was some concerns, for example, from Deep that said that they were looking at this as they were in opposition because they are tasked with conserving the state's natural resources for all citizens of Connecticut. And their concern is conveying this land to a private entity for private, potentially commercial use is an issue. I just wanted to know if you could address that.
Yeah, I did read Deeps and we're on board with open space. And I want to make that very clear. We have no intention. I mean, if Deep was okay if we hiking trail or something or to that effect, that would be about it. But I would leave it open space because, like I said, this parcel, most of it is ledge. So you're not going to do anything with it anyways. I don't know what it would take to bust up ledge, but there's a lot of ledge there. And I have no intention I want to leave it open space. You know what I mean? Like I said, my house touches it. And there's another property behind me that touches it in the camp. It's surrounded by personal property. Yeah, it's surrounded by personal property, separated from the state park and forest. And I understand Deep's concern. I appreciate that. But we're on the same page as far as keeping it open space. My father bought 25 acres up in the camp, and we left it alone for a long time. And the campsite of it is recreational. That's what we do. And I open space and recreation is what we're all about. And I don't want to develop it. We're not going to put any buildings on it. And it would probably cost too much to do it anyways. I don't even think you can because of all the ledge. There's no dirt where this is. It's huge ledge and then it dips in. It's not a good piece of property, to be quite honest. Pardon? Oh,
No, it's right.
I'm sorry.
If I could just add something to that. With all due respect to Deep, I totally understand their concern, but it would be very unlikely that Deep would, for that particular piece of land, for Deep to be able to pay as much attention to the well-being of that land and the safeguarding of that land from any pollution and mistreatment of that land than Danny would be able to, because he's literally at that location every single day. So if it were to be conveyed to him, I can guarantee you it would be under strict supervision, and there would be attention paid to that land far above and beyond what Deep would have the capability of doing for that one small parcel that's ledged between a landlocked area, with no real entrance unless you're going through his property, or you'd have to come from the other side. So it's just a matter of practicality. By him owning a business right next to it, he would be able to safe keep that land better than anyone else could.
So I guess I'm just a little unclear because earlier you were saying that there are people partying on the land and creating a lot of nuisance.
That's
But
what
you also say that the land's not really accessible and hard to get to. I'm just a little confused.
okay, so to straighten it out, it's literally my house is right there, so my driveway touches the land. And I do hear like people in the woods, and that's when I said I call the cops. There is a one area, but it's further down on the property where there's like a space where you can walk in, then all of a sudden it just ledge. So there's an area maybe 20, 30 feet wide, probably 30 feet wide. Because there's ledge, then a down, then ledge. So they go in that little 30-foot wide opening. So sorry, I'll clarify that. I
No,
apologize.
that's helpful. In terms of the conveyance, would you be open to a conservation easement on it as a condition of the land? Meaning that I know one of the concerns that Deep has brought up is it has a long roadway access. And so, there could be commercial aspects of putting up advertisements and billboards or signs or whatever for folks. But if we have a conservation easement, maybe that would not be have that ability to do so.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but yeah, we'd look at that. But as like far as billboards or anything, um, the very low traffic on that. Like this is a steep hill. We're 800 feet above sea level. So you go from, I don't know if you're familiar with Thomaston Avenue in Waterbury, where the brass mill mall used to, brass, actually it was a factory on Thomas Avenue. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
well, basically, well, then we go 800 feet up. So we go from basically, what's the river? We go from the
It's the Naugatuck River.
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
my daughter
yeah.
used to have events up there. So
Yeah,
I
so
sort of
we
know the
basically
area.
go from the Naugatuck River to 800 feet up. So you're climbing a steep hill, and it's that whatever that is, I'd take a look at it. Yeah, I don't probably won't have a problem. I don't know what that means, but let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all for my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I just want to follow up on those questions from Representative Dathan. So I think one of the concerns is when you convey state land into private hands, then it can go into other private hands, which then may not keep it open for open space. Is there something in the conveyance where there's language that keeps it open space use in perpetuity? Otherwise, it reverts back to the state. I mean, as
I don't know that.
So this is the first time Danny has ever done this, and he did the application all on his own. I think I can speak for him and say that we are open to any and all revisions, corrections that need to be made to the conveyance in order to make it okay by you guys. All he is looking to do is just keep that place clean and make sure nobody gets hurt, whether it's trespassers or whatever, people that shouldn't be there at a particular time doing whatever, whether it's for their safety or the safety of his customers on his land. That's all he's looking to do. He's not looking to develop it, and any and all, restrictions that you want to put on the deed would be welcomed by him.
Okay, great. That's helpful. So maybe because it looks like the open space use is a common goal, but it's just a matter of where it could go beyond that and whether that's going to be the intended use in perpetuity.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you again for your for testifying first
I
time.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. I think. Yep. Thank you. Okay, and so we'll go to now Mary Gaudette Wilson, who is testifying remotely. No, not online. Okay, so back. Holly Cassette. I see Holly Cassette. Sure.
Hi, I'm here.
Great.
For the record, my name is Holly Cosett, a longtime Newtown resident and co-founder of Protect Our Pollinators, a Newtown-based nonprofit. I support SB 1562 to remove the deed restriction that 6 Commerce Road be used for economic development purposes and permit the use of open space for recreational purposes. The 6 Commerce Road parcel is within walking distance of our town center. Its natural setting is valued by town residents of all ages for hiking, dog walking, bird watching, cross-country skiing, and horseback riding. In addition, its trails are used by the Newtown High cross-country track team as a safe alternative on our for running on our heavily trafficked streets, fed by Interstate 84 and routes 34 and 25. Keeping 6 Commerce as open space also enhances the neighboring Catherine Violet Hubbard Animal Sanctuary, an organization committed to protecting animals and environmental education. This 41+ parcel of historic farmland consists of 2 large meadows. Meadows are among the most threatened and rare habitats in Connecticut. Loss of wildlife habitat due to development and fragmentation is a major contributor to the decline of many important pollinators, birds, and other animal species. Meadows are necessary for sustaining essential pollinators, responsible for 80% of our native plants, trees, and shrubs, that in turn feed and shelter birds and other wildlife. Additionally, many birds, turtles, and mammals live and breed in these meadows. Animals also need contiguous corridors of land for finding food and mates. 6 Commerce has connections to other undeveloped lands. Development of 6 Commerce would fragment and isolate these lands, further impacting wildlife populations already in decline. 6 Commerce Road is located in an environmentally sensitive area. It is situated over our sole source aquifer. Protecting our drinking water is our highest priority. And this parcel sits uphill of Deep Brook, a Class 1 wild trout stream. The existence of trout is a clear indicator of stream health. The native grasses and forbs in the meadow above the stream are key to preventing erosion, sustaining groundwater recharge, and preventing thermal pollution in the Deep Brook ecosystem. Development of 6 Commerce Road would strip away this buffer, adding impervious surfaces and shallow-rooted turf grasses that could not hold back runoff of major pollutants such as sediment and synthetic chemicals and fertilizers, especially during more frequent and severe storm events. The result would be disastrous to Deep Brook and would have negative consequences to water bodies downstream all the way to Long Island Sound. Benefit to the well-being of the community, preserving essential pollinators, providing space for wildlife, protecting our single source aquifer, ensuring the quality of Deep Brook and water bodies downstream. I urge you to support Senate Bill 1562 to remove the deed restriction for use of economic development and permit its use for open space for recreational purposes. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions from committee? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I don't see either of our senators here. So we'll go to Jeffrey Manville.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to testify on House Bill 7281. I'm Jeffrey Manville. I'm the first selectman of the town of Southbury. I am the 9th generation, and my grandson is the 11th generation native born. The town of Southbury Board of Selectmen are in favor of the Connecticut House Bill number 7281, introduced on April 30th, 2025, stating an act amending a prior conveyance of a parcel of state land to the town of Southbury to change the restrictions on ownership and leasing of said parcel, to permit the previously conveyed parcel of land to the town of Southbury to be sold, transferred, or leased to a third party for housing purposes. Special Act 13-23, Section 5 currently restricts the town to lease or sublease the property strictly for senior housing only, yet there are no funding sources available for that purpose. It does not allow the town to consider other types of housing proposals.
There is a large demand for housing in Southbury with little available land to build on. Our town would benefit by having the flexibility to consider proposals of all housing types that would fulfill this demand. This will include a consideration of affordable housing proposals. Passing House Bill HB 7281 would assist our town in achieving our goal of adding appropriate housing options to our limited available housing supply. One of the things I want to point out with the Pierce Hollow Village senior housing was the need for senior housing in Southbury having the highest percentage at one time. It was the highest percentage of seniors. And the option for some of the seniors, and one was including my aunt who had moved away from Southbury and they came back and had resided in Grace Meadows so that she could finish her years of life out in a manner in a town that she was familiar with. What happened was the funding dried up for senior affordable housing or low income senior housing, subsidized senior housing. The issue became multi-generational became for us. The problem was it was when you look at the numbers that they were going to require for housing, there was a large number of 3-bedroom, multi-generational 3-bedroom units. There was a number of 2-bedroom units. The problem we ran into was there was a very, very low percentage of funding that would have to be included for 1-bedroom, which served our senior population. And frankly, it didn't really fulfill the need that we were looking for at that time. The town was willing to put up 1.5 million of our ARPA funding to support this endeavor, and they were not able to get any funding. That's the Pierce Hollow Village group. The also on this piece of property was estimated many years ago to be 1.25 million in environmental cleanup of this property. So that's kind of a hindrance in today's numbers without calculating. It's probably 1.5 million to clean it up. So there was a hurdle that had to be met to get this across. So when you take that into consideration, I think the basis of this is so that, and it was a consensus amongst the Board of Selectmen, though you have other testimony in front of you that says contrary to what they did vote. The idea was that we need the ability to explore all kinds of housing options to get this across for affordable housing. To support a lot of people who are living in town, some of which are, I have a nephew who is a truck driver. He has a CDL and he's, $1 million house is quite away from his reach. Nieces and nephews and friends of friends from generational families that are looking to be in Southbury. And affordable housing, frankly, we have had some affordable housing developments. And I know firsthand that a lot of the people who are in that affordable housing units that this developer have done, well vetted as people in the community who needed affordable housing, whether it's somebody who is divorced or separated, whatever have you. And frankly, a lot of them are people who have contributed substantially over their lifetime to our community. So we're not all newcomers from New York City, and we're not all newcomers from Fairfield County. We understand the need and what the backbone of our community is, in our fire department and our a lot of organizations that depend on these people. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you so much for being here and for your testimony. So I just wanted to clarify the testimony. So you are supporting perhaps amended language then that removes the restriction. Is that?
Yes.
Okay, because that's some of the opposition testimony is suggested support with amended language that opens up the possibility for the town to decide based on the project that's before them, whether it's senior housing or multi-generation housing, other kinds of affordable housing. So you support that openness of language as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to.
you know, Southbury, again, all across the aisle, we're concerned about the affordability in a community. And, you know, I am a realist, though. I will say I'm, I was a 40-year mechanic. I'm a realist, not a politician, to be honest with you. And the reality of developing something like this, the funding is difficult to get, whether it's in Hartford or in Washington, D.C. How do you make that happen? And the cost of constructing a housing project, even given the cost of building a market rate home, many developers have said if you can't build a certain size, you're not going to recover. How do you make that happen? And if our goal is to make these things happen, I also firmly believe that um, in these, we've had apartment complexes built with 830G. The nice thing is the developer has had to build into that 830G accommodations. So if you have 100 units, just basic math, and 30 of them are affordable, you have to enhance the other 70 to make it so that that rental, that unit will cover the loss of your 30% of your affordable. That being said, what's happened is, you know, they put in storage units because people are demanding, you know, higher end want some storage for their bicycles and different things they want. And the beauty of it is you don't know which unit or who is affordable and who is not. And that's the beauty of doing it that way. And it can actually happen where I think the cost, unfortunately today, what's the term? I don't know if I can afford to build my own house now, which I did back in 1999. But again, you know, we are very sensitive. I'm sensitive to it, being a mechanic for 40 years. You know, of the cost of housing, what it is today, and what it means to individuals.
Oh, that's a great point about all the pieces have to come together. So the flexibility seems to be an important component. Thank you. Representative Vail.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So is this is part of the old Southbury Training School site? Is that what it was?
Yes, it's the Personnel Village where many people reside. I've actually live around the corner from this. I'm very familiar with the training school campus. My mother was the assistant director of social services there and a nurse there. And I just want to say, God bless the people who did work here. The clients had very good health care. There's down to about 100 people, I believe, about 100 in the training school now.
So they're still open.
Yeah.
Okay. And so this is a portion of that land?
Where, yes, it's across the street from the campus proper. It would be on the power, they have the power generation, the steam generator on the other side of the road, but it's separated by Transylvania Brook, and there's a small floodplain next to it. So, which is pretty nice, but yeah, it's on the other side. And but there is some cleanup, but not, I don't believe, to the point of the main campus.
So it's not currently being used. And how many acres does that?
At top of my head, I don't know how many
Okay.
acres. It is substantial, and it has infrastructure in it.
Okay.
Some of the hurdles you'd need for affordable housing.
All right. Thank you. And was there ever like, this one's a little confusing because I know it was approved 12 years ago, but there was never like, it's never been conveyed, right? It's stipulated upon, like there's still, so this one's a little unique, but has fair market value been assessed?
I believe it was back that many years ago. The problem again, one of the problems with the conveying it is the cleanup, because does have contamination. So the way it works is if it's conveyed to the town, then we're responsible for the cleanup. So frankly, we were looking for a way to get that cleanup done. And you know, I'm familiar, you know, with the brownfields and everything else. And unfortunately, the state can't go under the brownfields to get it. So we were hoping that if they could get funding, it would be enough to clean it up and like I said, the ARPA money, we believed in it enough to put up 1.5 million of ARPA money.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Vale. Representative Dathan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, First Selectman, for being here today. I had an opportunity to come to your lovely neck of the woods a couple weeks ago and got to see firsthand this. It's 45 acres that is part of this conveyance, and understandably, I was very disturbed seeing some of the former workers' housing that is there that has really fallen into ruin. And, you know, talking about one of the campgrounds earlier about the number of parties and stuff like that, it looks like there was a bunch of activity that has happened there over the years with spray painting and stuff like that on the existing housing that's there. So, you know, I'm sure that this would be a welcome change for your community to have this. I was asking earlier about sort of 830G, and currently it sounds like Southbury doesn't have a moratorium for affordable housing. Is that correct?
There's no moratorium.
Okay, so if in any case, 30% of this land would have to go towards affordable housing at any rate. Is that correct understanding?
Yes, we would certainly want 30%. I'm fully in favor of 830G. I have had developers come and they've wanted to not make that 30% because of financial reasons.
Financial, yeah.
And I said, please bring us a full 30% 830G and we'll welcome it.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think some of the testimony that's out there, you know, has concerns that, you know, this could be subdivided and, you know, very large homes be built and not achieve that sort of goal. But because you don't have a moratorium in place, there is sort of like a mandate there that you would have to have the 30% at minimum to be able to take part of that. Okay, well, that's really useful and appreciate that. And I think that'll be all from Madam Chair.
Yeah, Southbury has always been not in the business of development, but actually the first time Southbury ever bonded money many years ago was to take 750 acres off the open market so it wouldn't be developed for houses. That was back when Uniroyal is at its heyday. So Southbury is definitely not in the wanting to be in the development business. We've preserved a lot of open space over the years, and we do recognize the need for this housing. We just need the flexibility to be able to make it look at the projects that are presented to us. Anything else?
Thank you so much. I think that's it from the committee. Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
testimony. Great. And I see my good colleague in the Senate, Senator Gordon.
Good afternoon. Chairs Gadkar, Wilcox, and Dathan, Ranking Member Sampson and Carney, members of the committee. I'm happy to be here. I'm glad to see you guys have a smaller agenda than the Appropriations Committee I'm sitting on with 132 right now. Yeah, so we'll see where we are when at the end of the evening. But I'm here to testify in strong support of Raise Bill 1567, an act conveying a parcel of state land to the town of Willington. This is a bill that was introduced originally by myself and Representative Nuccio. We are the delegation for Willington. This is a very small sliver of a parcel on Route 32, right near an exit on 84. It's, I think, around 1/5 of an acre. And literally, it's right in front of the property that the Willington Fire Department #1 has one of its stations. In fact, most of that property is used already for a couple flagpoles in an area where the state police do park to catch speeders. But the reason why we're looking to move this is that the Willington Fire Department #1, their building, their station there, literally is falling apart. It was built decades ago right next to a steep hill, and it has massive foundation water damage that really can't be fixed, and it has tremendous mold damage as a result that really cannot be fixed. For a period of time, the fire and ambulance crews were actually housed in a trailer, and some of them in a different part of town. And this fire station serves Wellington, serves a number of surrounding towns, and actually helps services 84 from Tolland all the way up to the Mass border, and sometimes is called upon to hop over the border for a few of the towns that borders our state when they need some regional assistance for big alarm fires. The reason to convey this land is the town is working on building a new station. They have to literally build one, and they want to move it away from the steep slope for obvious reasons. And to move it forward and to have enough parking and to be able to maneuver their vehicles in and out, this little sliver can be used. It doesn't really require any changes to it at all, and most of it is actually already paved. It's been paved for decades. But to be able to have that, so that way then ultimately the town and the fire department has that property, be able to move the station, the new station forward, and they also want to build a bigger station to house more crews, they really have to have that little sliver around 1/5 of an acre. And then that way they're not abutting too close to the state property. The fire service and the town are certainly going to allow DOT when they need to park their trucks there, which they sometimes do already, and the state police to hang out there to catch speeders, which they do already. So none of that's going to change at all. But it's really to be able to better allow a new station to be built and better serve the community. Hopefully a bigger, better fire station will provide those services. Right now, that station may or may not have to close if it gets condemned, and we're hoping that doesn't yet happen. Otherwise, that's why that little sliver. And again, it's around a 1/5 of an acre and really has no other use. And in prior discussions in prior years with the state, we never really heard any concerns from the state previously about it. I know the state is aware of it. But again, most of it's already paved, and it's been that way for decades.
Thank you, Senator Gordon. And I don't see a strong opposition to this. So I presume I would just ask you if you know of any other opposition. Would there be anybody opposed to this? It's just a matter of the appropriateness of conveying this. And I guess, is there any language in there around for the DOT and the state police to be able to access that? Do we need to put language in around that? But it doesn't seem like there's opposition to the conveyance itself in other ways.
We have not heard any opposition from the state when there's been some discussions. And I can tell you, the town officials have told me and the fire services have told me that they have no problem with DOT parking their trucks. In fact, the DOT tends to park some of their vehicles at times on the fire department's property. There is some property to the side that the trucks can be off the road and out of the way, not even on this parcel. And the state police, they never have a problem with the state police if they ever want to park there. And again, most of this little parcel already has flagpoles on it that the fire department maintains, quite frankly, for the state, and is already paved. So anything relative to what the state does, with the fire service is going to continue to allow them. I don't think we need it in writing. It's been a gentleman's agreement for many, many, many years, and no reason that's going to change at all. In fact, quite frankly, for security, it's nice sometimes to have a trooper park there, especially at night, because I know some of the fire service people do feel comfort in that.
And that was I don't see opposition testimony from the Department of Transportation or the state police, but in case there's suggestion for language to be put in there for that use of almost an easement, there would be no objection to that.
No, I don't believe the town, the fire services have any objection to it at all. And again, there's no lack of parking on either side of the existing station on their own property, that stuff can be done, and not even on the parcel. But if it's needed to put in to help move this forward, I don't see any problem with it, whatsoever.
Right. Thank you so much. And are there any other questions? Let's see if there's any other questions? No, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for
Enjoy
joining, and good luck with your long meeting tonight in appropriation.
That's all right. As you know, that's what we sign up for. So I guess I'll be ordering dinner and maybe breakfast while I'm here. But you guys have a good evening, and thank you.
Well, thank you. Nice to see you. Thank you, Senator Gordon. Next, we have Peter Olson. Peter? Oh, Peter is joining us remotely. Yep, Peter, we see you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. My name is Peter Olson. I'm an attorney with an office in Bethel at 275 Greenwood Avenue. I'm here to speak in support of House Bill number 7279, an act conveying a parcel of state land in the town of Bethel. I represent Gayatri Corporation, which is the owner of a parcel of land located at 18 Stony Hill Road in Bethel, and on which Gayatri currently operates a hotel. The property abuts Interstate 84 on the south side of the highway. In 2024, the Bethel Planning and Zoning Commission approved a site plan and special permit application to permit the construction of a second hotel on the property. The approved site plan requires the construction of a retaining wall for the parking area between the new hotel and the highway land. In the course of preparing our development plans, we reached out to the Department of Transportation to inquire about acquiring certain easements for grading and drainage from the property onto the state land north of the property that constitutes the interstate highway. We were informed that while the state of Connecticut owns the land, the dedicated highway right-of-way does not include the land, a small strip of land, which is directly adjacent to our property to the north. It appears to be a fairly unusual situation that the state would acquire land and then have the highway not have all of that land included in it. But the map that's filed in the land records, which I included in my written testimony, shows the situation clearly. On that map, the land labeled as now informally of Frank and Agnes Hudson is the property owned by my client. And you can see the small strip of land just to the north of that. If Gayatri Corporation is able to acquire this parcel of land, we'll be able to redesign the plan for the new hotel to minimize site disturbance and grading, and obviously for us, minimize construction costs. The conveyance will further economic development through the construction of the new hotel, and it will repurpose a piece of land which currently serves no purpose and add it back to the tax rolls of the town of Bethel. So for those reasons, I ask the committee to consider granting this piece of land. I'm available to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much for being here and for your testimony. There's a question, Representative Gucker.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Sadly, I came in the middle of your testimony. Could you just, again, remind me of where this piece of property is? I know the area very well. Just kind of want to get familiarized myself.
Sure. 18 Stony Hill Road is located near the traffic light at Vale Road in Bethel. The property has a Days Inn on it currently and is abutted on the north side by Interstate 84.
So this property is actually on Stony Hill Road, basically.
Correct. Well, the property owned by my client, Gayatri Corporation, is on Stony Hill Road. The property we're asking the state to transfer is a small strip of land behind our property, between our property and Interstate 84.
Okay, and what's the approximate size of that lot?
Well, that's a good question. The town of Bethel assessor's records carry it as 0.4 acres of land, but the map that's recorded in the land records shows it as only being about 200 and something feet in width. So I think the 0.4 acres is pretty aggressive. We're going to need to have a survey done in order to set the actual size, but it is, let's just say it's no more than 0.4 acres.
Okay, thank you. I will take a look at the map, and thank you for clarifying that for me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Gucker.
Thank you, Representative Gucker. Are there any other, I see no other questions from the committee. Thank you very much for joining and for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Jason Van Stone. Here. Who is he? Oh, as well. Okay. Okay. So we'll go back to David Ackert. I think I see you online.
Yes, hello. My name is Dave Ackert. I live in Newtown, and I'm representing my family as well as the Newtown Conservation Coalition. I'd like to thank the committee and Newtown's delegation for drafting SB 1562 at the request of residents, the Board of Selectmen, and the Legislative Council here in Newtown. Some 20 years ago, the Connecticut Department of Agriculture gifted a historic parcel of farmland, now known as number 6 and number 8 Commerce Road, to the people of Newtown. When the legislature conveyed the land, the deed included an economic development restriction because on the surface, especially all the way from Hartford, economic development seemed appropriate for a parcel with an address on Commerce Road. What the legislature did not understand back then is that this land is a fragile ecological treasure set way back from Commerce Road. Unlike other nearby commercial properties, this lot is fronted by an important roadside tributary, preventing development anywhere near the road. It is mostly rare high meadow and home to several endangered species. It's situated above Newtown's single source aquifer that provides drinking water to half the town, is surrounded by fragile wetlands and one of only 9 Class 1 natural trout habitats remaining in Connecticut. Apparently, environmental engineers and wildlife experts were not consulted before placing the economic development deed restriction. Newtown's first selectmen and economic development commissions have spent 20 years trying and failing to develop it, despite spending hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars on real estate marketing consultants. At one point, after asking for and receiving a $500,000 steep grant from the Connecticut Department of Economic Development, they decided to pursue a plan called the Newtown Tech Park. In 20 years, including when a developer proposed residential housing there last year, nobody has ever been able to secure permits from DEP, the Army Corps of Engineers, or local wetlands officials because of the topography and the ecological catastrophe that would result from bulldozing this land. After burning through half the Tech Park grant money on more failed efforts, the state DED finally told them to stop and reallocate the remaining grant money to another project. Ironically, this land is now contributing to the local economy in a big but responsible way. Several years ago, local and state lawmakers wisely gifted a portion of this land to the Catherine Violet Hubbard Animal Sanctuary. Not only are they amazing stewards of this natural resource, but they're also one of, if not, the top economic development engine in all of Newtown, attracting tens of thousands of visitors to the town and to its businesses annually. In fact, they were just named the gold winner for Nonprofit Organization of the Year by the American Business Awards. They're generating good business for our town. And in closing, the people of Newtown need you to please approve this bill, removing any remaining economic development restriction once and for all, so that we can forever protect what almost became the Newtown Tech Park and preserve one of Newtown's last public open spaces, and perhaps even rename it, most appropriately, as the Newtown Eco Park. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. I thank you for your time. And if I may, to address Senator Sampson's question at the beginning a couple hours ago, I've counted 67 written testimonies of support, 2 in opposition. One of those was the rant about big government that Representative Belinsky referred to. And the other one was a technologically challenged person who accidentally clicked oppose instead of support. So I just want to clarify that for the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ackert. And you're in good company today. There's a lot of support around the conveyance. And so let me see if there's any questions from the committee. No, thank you very much for joining us and for your testimony.
Thank you.
And next we have Joseph Ovies joining us remotely. Let's see. Yep, I see you remotely. Joseph, are you able to? Yep.
Yes, perhaps unmuting will help. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify on this bill, Senate Bill 1562 via Zoom. Makes it entirely possible to do so. I'm testifying in support of this bill on behalf of myself. I am a retired professional engineer, civil and environmental by training, but I am no longer practicing doing that. I have been involved in the open space designation, development opportunities, environmental impacts of the development on the property that is at discussion here, which is called 6 Commerce Road, for over 20 years. That particular property was actually conveyed from the Department of Agriculture to the town as part of the Fairfield Hills development activity in 2004. And that was done along with the other Fairfield Hills properties, but that particular piece had the restriction on it that it be used for economic development. That was 37.54 acres. There were 2 other parcels of property located on Commerce Road, which gave access to this, that were conveyed earlier in the 1990s. Perhaps that's some answer to the question that Representative Belinsky brought up earlier. The neighboring property, which is now the Hubbard Sanctuary, was actually originally to be conveyed to the town of Newtown as open space in 2003. The development projects which were proposed for these 2 properties, because of the sensitive nature of the subject property of this particular bill, the wetlands, the area close to the stream and so forth, there were a number of proposals that went back and forth, and they were codified in state legislation, which would allow various parcels to be developed, but always required at least 34 acres of open space to be conveyed to the town of Newtown. So we had some that was going to be economically developed and some that would be open space. In 2014, after the Sandy Hook shootings, the property that had been conveyed to the town of Newtown as open space was actually conveyed to the Hubbard Foundation, leaving the other parcel that is the subject of this bill undeveloped still. All the development proposals that were put together for that had major opposition from within the town because of environmental reasons, and none of them ever came forward. So where are we today? We have a history with a clear intent that Newtown was to receive 34 plus acres of open space and a parcel for economic development. The Hubbard Sanctuary, which is now located on a parcel that was to have been open space, actually brings the economic development to the town. We've heard a number of people talking about that and the great benefit that that brings to the town. What is missing is the open space that was intended for the town of Newtown to receive. So I would encourage you to vote yes to pass this bill and have the parcel designated actually as open space or recreational purposes for the town of Newtown. For those who might suggest it be used for building of housing, I would suggest look at the other side of the old Fairfield Hills property. We have a number of buildings there that are ripe for redevelopment. They already have all of the utilities. They have the water. They have everything ready to go on that. And let's preserve this for open space, because once it's gone, it's lost forever. I've got quite a bit of history on this legislatively because of working on this, and I'd be happy to provide that or answer any questions that people might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and for your testimony. I don't see any questions from the committee. Thank you very much again for providing some more of that context. Very much appreciated. Next, we have Charles Gardner online. I see you on Zoom. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hi, Chairs Dathan and Gadker Wilcox, Ranking Members Sampson and Carney, members of the Government Oversight Committee, Charlie Gardner from Newtown, Connecticut. Speaking on my own behalf, just want to clarify, not behalf of my employer, on Senate Bill 1562 on 6 Commerce Road in Newtown. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I did not oppose this bill, but I'm testifying in support of adding an amendment to clarify that the state, by the bill, is not forbidding Newtown from allowing affordable housing or any housing on the property. Before going any further, I just wanted to offer a little more context on this property for those who might be unfamiliar with it. This is located in the center of town, as others have said. It's a picturesque property that sits on Commerce Road, which, as the name suggests, is essentially an industrial park with a variety of large-scale uses. The Housatonic Railroad tracks are to the west. This part of Newtown is also dominated by the state of Connecticut influences. Nearby are the Fairfield Hills campus, the Gardner Correctional Institution, the Horse Guard property, and the sewage treatment plant, which after a long political battle was built at the insistence of the state of Connecticut in the 1990s, in part to address failing septic systems in the town center. That plant daily discharges treated effluent into Deep Brook, the trout stream that's being discussed. This property is adjacent to that sewage treatment plant and, as was mentioned before, has been intended for development by the town for over 20 years, given its access to sewer and water services, as well as being 3 minutes from exit 10 on I-84. The deed restriction was not the result, as far as I can tell, of an oversight by Hartford, but rather conformed to Newtown's 2004 Plan of Conservation and Development. And while the property once lacked road access, that is no longer the case. The town of Newtown spent many years and significant resources under the direction of former Land Use Agency Director George Benson, constructing an access road from Commerce Road to the property that was only recently completed. Now, the purpose of this bill, as I understood it as a resident of Newtown, was to remove the deed restriction on 6 Commerce Road, the property in question, and to return the future of the parcel to the people of Newtown. If that's what it does, I agree with it. But now I'm hearing the intent is that the state is actually just exchanging one mandate for another for open space instead of economic development. I'm reading the bill as written, and it says that the town, quote, may use the parcel for recreational or open space purposes, not that it's required. If the bill does actually expand flexibility for the town rather than imposing a new mandate, I would very much agree with it, and I would further urge that this bill be amended to mention housing, especially affordable housing, alongside open space and recreation. Why do I say that? Recent plans for senior housing on a portion of this property were opposed by some on the ground that housing does not qualify as, quote, economic development, and that influenced the local debate over the project. The state can clarify this ambiguity by adding the term housing or including affordable housing to the bill. This will actually enhance local control while leaving the town free to pursue conservation or other options. Conservation is not an all or nothing proposition, and good conservation policy requires identifying which areas are suitable for conservation and which are suitable for development. That can apply to individual properties as well. Part of a property may be developed and the majority, maybe the vast majority, left untouched. That, I think, is a debate for the town to have, not for us here today. But in order for the town to have it, the state needs to stand out of the way, and it can do so by clarifying this bill to state that it does not forbid the town from considering additional uses such as housing and affordable housing. Again, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there questions of the committee? Representative Dathan.
Thank you very much, Charles. I did mention your testimony earlier, and I didn't get really much of a response. I just wanted to see if you had heard that aspect of the testimony.
I did. I was on at the beginning, so thank you. Yes, I did hear your the question and the response. But as I understood it, the representative had not read the comments I had made, so it sounded like he wasn't in a position to comment on them.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Charles. I just wanted to follow up to clarify your comment. So you would like the affordable housing to be added as an option for the town? I understand that. But in lieu of the work that's being done now, I mean, is there a possibility for affordable housing for the parcels that exist now to be built there? Is that what you're saying? Or is this in the future leave the possible use open for some future use of the land.
Sure. Just to clarify that point, there was it's 2 or 3 years ago a proposal, I believe, for elderly housing on this property, and there was objection from some quarters that this would not be permissible under the deed restriction because housing would not qualify as economic development, that it was a net negative revenue generator for the town and therefore couldn't be considered economic development. Since the term was undefined, it wasn't clear, but that distorted the debate a little bit. Um, my, uh, my point here today is only to say that if the deed restriction is expanded and if the town is allowed more flexibility, including conservation and open space, that the restriction also be clarified to state that by the use of the term economic development, the state is not forbidding the town considering housing as a use as well, including affordable housing. As for better or worse, that is how some in the town have construed it as economic development as prohibiting housing. I'm not endorsing housing or one way or the other. I would just say that that's a question for the residents of Newtown to decide rather than for the state to decide in this case.
Oh, I understand. Okay, so you want that conveyed as a clarification under economic development, under the purposes for economic development.
Yes, that would be my suggestion, a clarification for open space, recreation, or for housing or affordable housing use, to address, I think, if the to address that uncertainty, which has, I think, cast a cloud of uncertainty a bit over housing proposals because it's not entirely clear whether the economic development condition covered them or not.
Great. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
Great. Thank you very much for your testimony.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
You too. And I see Jason Van Stone, you're online if you want to join us. Yes, Jason.
Thank you very much. Chairs Gadkar, Wilcox, and Dathan, Ranking Members Sampson and Carney, members of the Government Oversight Committee, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to testify here today on Bill 7281, which is an act amending a prior conveyance of a parcel of state land to the town of Southbury to change the restrictions on ownership and leasing of said parcel. As I said, my name is Jason Van Stone. I'm a selectman here in the town of Southbury, and I'm the author of town's original request to revisit this language. At this point, I'd like to thank State Representative Buxbaum and State Senator Eric Berthel for advancing the bill originally that led us here to your committee. As I think you've already heard today, and I'm sorry for repeating a bit, but HB 7281 would amend existing legislation to the Southbury Training School property known as the Personnel Village. And as many of you again know, the Southbury Training School property has been part of discussions here in the legislature for decades. Finding an appropriate new purpose for this unused portions of the campus is well past due, and I ask you today to pave the path towards its revitalization. This property was identified years ago as a potential site for a housing development at the time. And at that time, the town saw an opportunity to bring affordable senior housing stock to the market that it believed was an ideal location. The legislature then, in 2013, adopted Special Act 1323, which was later amended by Public Act 16-1. And this act allowed for the conveyance of the property for such housing purposes. The current legislation allows for Southbury to lease the property to a nonprofit for the purposes of senior housing. In the time since, the nonprofit organization that had led that effort has since dissolved, and no new entity has arisen in its wake. Southbury still has a keen interest in potentially bringing housing to the site. Given the current language, the town would be limited to only leasing the property for senior housing purposes. The town asks through HB 7281 that the senior housing restriction that exists in the current legislation be removed. Having broader and less restrictive language would enhance our ability to explore all housing options that may be available on the property. This could still be included as senior housing or affordable housing, but not simply limited to it. Redeveloping this portion of unused campus will be a great first step towards the future of Southbury Training School, and I ask the members of the committee to support House Bill 7281. On the way towards its passage, I'd also request that the condition of one modification be proposed to the legislation. Language was added to HB 7281, which would require that any funds received by the town for the sale or lease of the property be paid back to the state. And while I understand that this is considered generally to be standard language for a bill of this type, it doesn't appear in the current legislation, and we respectfully request that this language be eliminated here in this amendment. Both the existing language and HB 7281 require Southbury to engage in a number of activities that would expend most town man hours and capital to allow us to transfer the property to the town, including things such as a survey and an environmental impact evaluation, which could result in additional terms and conditions in accordance with subsection C of this legislation. And anyone who's ever owned property knows that the costs of ownership continue for the life of the property. So future costs to the taxpayers of Southbury that will be required for the solicitation and preparation of the sale or lease are unknown at this time. Also unknown, are there any costs that may arise during the development of the property? Under this language, Southbury would have to incur all the costs involved with bringing this much-needed housing stock to market, while any and all eventual proceeds would go back to the state of Connecticut. And I'm not too sure this model is one that the people of Southbury would be interested in partaking. So given that the state and town's great desire to see housing at this site, and that the current legislation does not have any of that language included, I'm requesting that the requirement that all funds be for the lease or sale be paid back to the state be removed. And I thank you for your opportunity today to present this testimony on House Bill 7281, and I urge the members of the committee to support the legislation, albeit with the slightly amended language that I have mentioned. Thank you very much, and I'm here humbly to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for being here and for providing that testimony. Are there any questions from? Nope. Seeing no questions. Thank you very much for joining us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, and next we have John Larkin. Okay, small L. Larkin. Thank you. Welcome. Oh, if you turn the microphone on, sorry. Thank you.
Today I'm speaking on behalf.
Yeah, if you could just start again. They can't hear you on Zoom without the microphone. Thank you.
Good afternoon or evening. Co-chairs Gadkar Wilcox, Dathan, ranking members Sampson and Carney, as well as esteemed members of the Government Oversight Committee. My name is John Larkin, and today I'm speaking on behalf of Connecticut Forest and Park Association. Since our founding in 1895, CFPA has advocated for setting aside many iconic places for the public, such as Peoples and Goodwin State Forest, Rocky Neck, Sherwood Island, Sleeping Giant, Talcott Mountain, Gillette Castle State Parks, along with many others. In addition to our great work on public lands, we, along with our amazing volunteers, maintain Connecticut's iconic Blue Blaze Trail system, which makes up over 825 miles of hiking trails that traverse both public and private lands. CFPA's long commitment to public lands is why we believe transparency is so important before public lands are conveyed, especially those critically important lands managed by DEEP and the Department of Agriculture. This year, we have a few comments and would like to speak in opposition to 7282, an act concerning a parcel of state land to the town of Plymouth. This parcel is part of the Mattatuck State Forest and is currently available to Connecticut residents for recreation and enjoyment. It is valuable for many reasons, including public access, recreation, habitat connectivity, forest management, and wildlife protection. Conveying this parcel of deep forest land with road frontage will impact the public's perceived ability to access state land. Reducing easy access to public resources is the first deterrent in keeping people from getting outdoors. In addition, state forest lands are a key element to meeting our climate resiliency targets by reducing erosion and storing carbon. As stated, this parcel has significant road frontage, which increases its economic value far and above the nominal price that is included in the bill for a private entity to be added to a commercial enterprise. Giving away public resources for such a small amount of money is an affront to the state's long-term open space goals and the significant money that is invested in each year in this effort. Couple of general comments. In all conveyances, we like to see deed restrictions, reverter clauses, especially when the possibility of intended use may change. Lastly, we always want to raise caution with the term passive recreation. While recognizing its importance, it can mean many things to many different people. We just ask that transparency be the highest priority when considering this phrase. CFPA has serious concerns with conveying valuable deep resources with demand for public lands and access to natural places growing every year. We should be focused on expanding them, enhancing them, and protecting them for all residents. Thank you for the opportunity to testify and to your ongoing commitment to making this process as transparent as possible. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And I see there's a question from Representative Vale.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. So you mentioned the price. If obviously I think that price was put in, I don't think there was any research done on that price. If there was a fair market value, it sounds like I've been through this stuff before in the past with other conveyances that this particular section is not really being policed or sought out by DEEP or anyone else. Again, according to the testimony, that there's garbage on this area, there's old couches out there, things like that, and that this person would be willing to kind of clean it all up and understand that. And it doesn't sound like anyone's using this this piece on the other side of the park. Again, I don't know all the dynamics. If there was a fair market value, if that was done, and it doesn't sound like it's an area of land that DEEP is currently that specific piece looking after, would you be opposed to it still then if we got the right price for that?
Well, a
piece
couple of
land?
things. Like you, I've been through a fair number of these conveyances over the years. And a lot of times in my experience, DEEP has some parcels of land abutting state forests and parks. And a lot of times they've secured those as part of a larger transaction, but they also can be set aside for if they're going to do management on a parcel, if they think that provides additional parking to a parcel, particularly in the western part of the state where a lot of the parcels are accessed just by side of road access. So not being familiar with this one, I'm not exactly sure how this parcel fits into that equation. In terms of management, unfortunately, I had not heard of the trash and partying, and hopefully DEEP is aware of that. But obviously, with our volunteers, that is something that we're familiar with in other parcels across the state. And so in a rush to transfer just for that, I would use some caution that there could be a number of solutions to that scenario. But, I believe the proponent to have good intentions. And so, I think that the devil's always in the details, but I think there are a lot of solutions at the end of the day that potentially could avoid a conveyance if necessary.
All right. I appreciate your impact. Again, I haven't been there either.
Nor have I.
It just sounds like a piece that maybe no one's paying attention to.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
maybe at the very least, maybe this will bring light to that area and maybe people will start to do that. But
Absolutely. And it may have been like a lay down yard in a timber harvest at one point. They may have identified it for, he said there are climbers that use that area. It may have been identified as a resource for that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Again, not familiar with it.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Vale. Representative Gucker.
Good afternoon, and thank you for testifying today.
Sure.
One of the things that the proponent of the bill was not clear on was the size of this property. During his testimony, he was saying it was about 10 acres. We look at the papers, it says 5 acres thereabouts. I mean, that's a big discrepancy.
Sure.
So do you have an idea on how large this parcel is?
I was just going off of the testimony, both in the proposed bill and the testimony that DEEP had offered. but I had not, looked at Google Earth or anything like that to identify the size. So no, but I was here for his testimony. Yes.
Well, thank you for that. That would play, I think a factor in if a compromise was to come up. We're looking at, what has been offered for the property, which I'm in agreement with others here. This, I think, was just a number that was tossed out there. But of course, that would change with, the size of the property. But then again, also, there was a statement made that, which I disagree with, that the land was kind of worthless or valueless. I don't see land that way. When they say unbuildable, everything is buildable if you have the right engineer. So have you surveyed or looked at this property at all to really kind of get an idea of what it is?
No, I've not been out there, but as I mentioned to Representative Vale, a lot of times in my experience, Deep has parcels adjacent to, forests and parks that have perhaps sometimes other intended uses, like they may have identified this as if there was unfortunately a wildfire there, that this would be, a place where they could set up, or parking for the rock climbers that the proponent had talked about. There often is other details on parcels like this.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you very much for your advocacy.
And obviously the economic value, if it is just 10 acres, billboards, as you said, anything can be engineered to make it work.
I would love to have 10 acres myself. I only have 2. So thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your testimony. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, and next we have Lisa Shirk.
Hi,
Oh, hi there.
my name is Lisa Shirk, and I'm a resident of Newtown, and I support Senate Bill 1562. I belong to quite a few local ecologically minded organizations. 6 Commerce Road has been in our local news a lot lately, and when you hear the address, 6 Commerce Road, many people visualize an industrial park with many buildings and asphalt everywhere. I know I did. Yet when you drive down the dirt road and the trees give way to the meadow, the view is stunning. It overlooks the trees in the meadow, and the Catherine Violet Hubbard complements its beauty on its border. As you stand and look out over the vista, you can see butterflies dancing in and out of the tall meadow grasses. And as you walk down the old road, the forest engulfs you until you reach Deep Brook, gurgling along another border. As you glance up the hill, you see swallows soaring and diving for insects to bring back to their nestlings, and rabbits playing hide and seek among the milkweed. And then you know that this beautiful space needs our protection from development. It is hard to imagine this bucolic scene giving way to asphalt and concrete for development. Deep Brook would be forever changed, likewise all the animals that depend on it for habitat and sustenance, and yes, us humans as well. I support this bill to change the conveyance from economic development to open space, and that Catherine Violet Hubbard has the economic piece nicely handled. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And you're all also in good company today, so I don't see any other questions. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, next we have Catherine Seaspill. Seaspill? Kathy Seaspill. Welcome.
Either one is fine. Thank you. Thank you for having me here today to testify. Co-chairs Gadkar, Wilcox, and Dathan, ranking members Sampson and Carney, vice chairs McCrory and Gucker, and honorable members of the Government Oversight Committee. My name is Kathy Seal, and I am the Connecticut Land Protection Manager for Save the Sound. I am here to oppose HB 7282, an act conveying a parcel of land in Plymouth. And I submitted written testimony, and rather than repeating that, which some of which you've heard already, I'd just like to add a couple of comments based on previous testimony. I want to note that I really sympathize with Mr. Gentile's situation. As a lifelong camper myself, I know how unpleasant an experience it can be to be in a campground when there are people partying next door. But the solution to this problem is not the conveyance of land owned by the public into private hands. And another note is that I hear people saying this land is unused, it doesn't have any other value. We hear that a lot in land conservation work. And a lot of people think of land as only having value if humans are using it. But this is actually also very valuable open space for a number of ecosystem services that I really haven't heard anybody speak about yet, that are invisible to a lot of people, like wildlife habitat, providing connectivity among our forests, which is a challenge in Connecticut, such a highly developed state, carbon storage, public access, as has been noted before. And as Amy Patterson noted earlier, the state has a goal of 21% open space that has not been met yet. And so conveying state park lands into private hands is counter to that goal. I would also add that conveying state park lands into private hands sets a very bad precedent for chipping away at our state's open space. And I just want to make one more comment, which is that I really appreciate the questions that are being asked. And one of the reasons it's difficult to answer them is because while we really appreciate the system that's been put in place in the last couple of years to post publicly all of the documentation on each of these land conveyances so that we can respond to them, look through them and see if there are any concerns. This particular legislation and some of the other kind of late posting bills, none of that documentation was posted. So we're kind of driving almost blind on this. We can see I did plug in the coordinates that are in the bill itself to kind of see where the property is, but we don't have site maps. We don't have the application. We don't have information about aquifer protection areas. We don't have all the information on this particular parcel that we got and on the other earlier submitted bills. And I do want to thank you again for that. That's a fairly recent development, and we really do appreciate that that system has been upgraded and it's been possible for us to see that documentation. It makes a big difference to all of those of us who are working in land conservation. And I'll leave my written testimony to say the rest. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And yes, and the conveyance process has changed hands a little bit to be in this new committee. So thank you for that. We will make sure that we're aligning our protocols with the previous protocol. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Representative Vale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening.
Good evening.
Have you surveyed that parcel of land? Based on your testimony, I'm going to say you haven't. So
No, I wish
we
I
don't
knew
know,
more about it.
we don't know of any particular species that inhabit that land.
If we knew exactly where, the parameters of the property, we could look it up on the natural diversity database. But I did not do that because I'm really not totally certain, again, because all the documentation, the supporting documentation isn't there for public viewing. But that's certainly something that would be worth doing. And to piggyback on what Mr. Larkin said, I would encourage the committee to go back to DEEP and ask them about this property, because certainly it's part of Mattituck State Forest. And so DEEP would be able to answer a lot of these questions. And I know that Commissioner Dykes submitted opposing testimony to this. So it would be very helpful to go back to the Parks Division and ask them, what this parcel means to the state forest.
Like, I've been through this in the past where it appears to me that your organization tends to oppose anything without even doing the research, any type of any state land going to any private entity, regardless of the purpose. Like last year, we had the YMCA in Woodstock that wanted to acquire 19 acres of land, which they're a great partner, serve every community in the state of Connecticut with kids out in there. And it's adjacent to their land. It doesn't abut any state forest. And that's just one example. It's when I get to see things a little bit more, open my eyes a little bit more. To me, your testimony would hold more weight with me if you didn't just say no to every single thing and you did a little bit of research. Because, you look at the state of Connecticut, I just Googled it, but I had done research in the past. In 1900 was 38% forested, and now it's 56 to 61% forested. So the state of Connecticut, especially I I represent Summer, Stafford, Union, and Woodstock. We are great with the environment and we take care of a very wooded area. So, sometimes people matter too. So there's we sometimes we could try to find some type of agreement where I don't think we need to villainize people who want to pick up a piece of land for the right reason. And I just, when you just say no to everything without any checks or balances, I have a hard time taking it serious.
So to respond to a couple of things you just said, Representative, first of all, I want to point out that out of the whole list of bills that are on the agenda today, this is the only one that we're expressing concern about. I would agree with Amy Patterson, who testified earlier in support of that piece in Sprague. I think there's some great stuff happening in Newington. And I'm testifying against one particular bill on this list, of quite extensive list today, regarding Woodstock and also this property. Yes, concerned about people having access, which is why taking state land that belongs to all of the people of Connecticut and moving it into private hands limits public access. So yeah, I mean, the YMCA is great. I'm sure this campground is terrific, but we want to make sure that the state land remains in the hands of the people of all of the people of Connecticut, and not just the people who can afford to go to camp or go to the campground. And I guess the other thing that you just mentioned about research, I would love to be able to have done some more research on this property, but unfortunately this bill was posted very late and without any supporting documentation. So again, we really appreciate that system of publicly posting that documentation. We didn't used to get it at all in advance. So we very much appreciate having access to that. But this bill and a couple of the others that came in very late in the process, it's hard to do the research when the documentation hasn't been shared with us. And I understand, I want to acknowledge, I realize this is the first year this has been under government oversight. So obviously, there's probably a little glitch in the system and it'll get taken care of. But absolutely happy to do the research, but the documentation needs to be there in order for us to follow up on it.
Thank you so much. And I should say I've learned that we're actually waiting for more information. So we ourselves don't have the documentation to be able to put up. So that was the issue there. And yes, I do appreciate you coming here raising concerns, which is the point of a public hearing based on the research you were able to do. And I think they're very legitimate to think about as we think about state dollars and state land, what it means to make the conveyance into private hands in particular, whether it's for a good purpose or not. All of those things have to be factored in and to be considered. So appreciate you raising those concerns.
Thank you. And if I may, I just want to make one more quick point about, it's absolutely true what Representative Vale said, that about 60% of Connecticut is forested. But I do want to make the point that 75% of that forested land is actually privately owned. And so all of that land that's privately owned is vulnerable. It doesn't mean it's going to stay forested. And that's one of the big concerns we have. And it's one of the reasons why the state, in statute says we're going for 21% to make sure that we're protecting a good portion of that land that may otherwise be vulnerable to development. That's the biggest vulnerability that we are concerned about.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And are there any other questions? I don't think it is. Yep, that's it. Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Okay, and then we have Lori Hertug.
Good evening. Thank you so much to every member of the Government Oversight Committee for listening to our testimony. I'm here in support of SB 672. And I'm not only representing myself, but I'm also representing my family and all of the members of the Newtown Conservation Coalition that have not been able to come here physically to Hartford. So I definitely want to share their voice here. And as you know, we've had a lot of testimony around this subject. So I'm going to just keep it very short to say that, we're working very tirelessly over a long period of time to finally get to this point. So we're very happy that we want to just share how excited we are to declare 6 Commerce as open space. So we're just asking you to please vote yes and to approve this bill so that we can ensure that property remains open space for Newtown, all of its residents for the rest of eternity. So thank you very much. We appreciate your time and efforts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being here to represent the voice of others.
Yes,
That's
kind of
always
like
important.
a last recap of everyone that's spoken. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. I see there are no, I just want to make sure, no questions. No, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I think we have our last speaker, Nicole Morris, and our clerk, Greg, is going to help facilitate that conversation. Thank you, Greg.
Ms. Morris, can you hear? Go ahead, Senator.
Yes, please proceed. Oh, please introduce yourself and proceed.
Ma'am, you can go ahead and proceed. Introduce yourself first, please.
Myself.
Yes, please.
My name is Nicole Moore. I live at 15 Logan Avenue in Newtown, Connecticut, and with my husband. We have lived there since 1969, and I am calling to testify that I encourage the committee to change the deed use restriction of 6 Thomas Road in Newtown from economic development to open space for recreation use. And, this is a very pristine land, and we cannot ignore the negative impact that multiple dwellings on that land would have on the deep brook trout area located downhill from where the buildings would be built. Okay? That's all I have to say. So we are talking about the Senate Bill 1562. Is that right?
Yes, thank you very much for your testimony. And you were in good company today, so we appreciate you adding that. Are there any questions from the committee? No, I think we're good. Thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you, Greg, for helping facilitate that communication to us. Thank you.
Okay, that's all I had to say.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, so that concludes the speakers that have already registered. I believe that both Senator Austin and Senator Kushner are going to be in appropriations, and so we'll look for their written testimony. Are there any others present or online that would like to be added to the speaker list? Okay, seeing none, I think we will conclude this public hearing. Thank you very much to everybody that joined. Any closing comments? Nope. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.